Chapter 1021. Jing Yunzhao's eyes were full of sarcasm. She glanced at Xin Shi. Seeing her slightly stiff gaze, she directly looked back at her provocatively. The illusion of harmony on the surface would not last long. Xin Shi dared to come forward to find trouble with her on this occasion, which proved that she could not tolerate it and was not prepared to tolerate it. This was just right. A senior stylist had to know everything from makeup, hairstyle design, clothing and jewelry matching, and her requirements were very reasonable. After all, as the assistant of a great stylist at her age, if she couldn't be compared to some ordinary makeup artists, it would be too unreasonable. Moreover, she was gambling. Although she did not have much of an impression of this Song Xiaoyu, she was someone who had seen her before. If she thought about it carefully, there would still be some clues. Song Xiaoyu had indeed been admitted to a university in the capital, but in her memory, it was not a very famous institution. If she had been successful later on, Yi Qin would have kept mentioning her. But the truth was, after she was 12 years old, she did not seem to have heard of this cousin. Her memory of this cousin was when Song Xiaoyu had just been admitted to a university. After all, to be able to go to a luxurious metropolis like the capital was an amazing thing for people in a small town like her. At this time, Song Xiaoyu's face was a little conflicted. But after thinking about it, she still opened the makeup box. In fact, she did not have a good life in the capital. When she was admitted to a university in the capital, in the eyes of her relatives and friends, she brought honor to her ancestors. In fact, when she went to university, she realized that she was a pheasant that had crawled out of a grass nest. Her pride was not worth mentioning at all in front of others. She did not have a good family background and was not very outstanding in her profession. She studied design, but after graduating, she could not find a job at all. After going around in circles for a few years to make a living, she went home less and less to avoid embarrassment. Now she was 30 years old and only had one boyfriend. Her boyfriend's family disliked her for not having a decent dowry, so their marriage was going to be ruined. It just so happened that she had found a new job recently. She was doing odd jobs in a bridal shop owned by a famous stylist. She had accidentally seen the information of the customer that the boss wanted to serve. Then, she had said a few words and said that the girl looked like her cousin. Later, she didn't know why, but the assistant that was supposed to follow her was changed to her. No matter what, this was a good thing. Of course, she wouldn't refuse. Besides, she was curious whether that person was Jing Yunzhao, so she came to take a look. She didn't expect to be seen by Jing Yunzhao when she dragged another assistant to Jing Yunzhao's door to ask around. After opening the door, she realized that it was really her. That destitute wild girl had really become a phoenix. Song Xiaoyu's hand, which was holding the powder brush, trembled a little. She thought about it carefully. Although she had never seen the boss prepare for the customers, she had at least seen the makeup artists in the shop do it. It was just a face, so she could at least copy it. No matter what, she had studied design before, so she was the best at drawing pictures. With this thought in mind, he became much calmer. Then, he began to busy himself in front of the woman in front of him. On the portable makeup table in front of him, there were all kinds of bottles and jars. There were also many foreign languages. The powders were easy to guess, but the rest were difficult. She couldn't apply them all on her face. If she really did that, she would probably have to apply a thick layer, right? Although it was a beautiful idea, the reality was very harsh. In less than 10 minutes, her true colors were revealed, and the corners of the ladies' mouths twitched. Chapter 1022. Women like them might not be proficient in other things, but when it came to cosmetics, they definitely understood it very well. Although there were various brands of skincare products that they used on a daily basis, they could mix up other things, but they would never mix up those precious bottles that exuded fragrance. However, the fact was that the woman in front of them, who claimed to be the assistant of a great stylist, was applying those products that had the same function but different brands on the employee's face. The fragrance was mixed up and became a little thick and pungent. Not only that, this woman couldn't even distinguish the type of cosmetics, let alone recognize the brand. It was completely like graffiti. She didn't know how to draw at all, and she couldn't even apply it evenly. Now, the employee's face was smeared with small granules. It was really scary. If their makeup artist was at this level, they might as well do it themselves. It seems that Big Sister Song isn't very proficient in makeup. How about choosing clothes and jewelry? As an assistant, you should have a good point, right? Jing Yunzhao said again. At this time, someone had already brought the 3 groups of stylists over. When one of them saw Song Xiaoyu, a layer of panic suddenly appeared on her face. Song Xiaoyu was at a loss. She felt that Jing Yunzhao's words were like timely rain. She quickly nodded again. Makeup was difficult, but choosing clothes was easy. Besides, this was the Su family. Those clothes were definitely the most beautiful and the most popular. There wouldn't be any mistakes if she randomly picked one. Soon, after pretending to gesture for a while, she directly took out one of the clothes. As for jewelry, it was a complete set of gold, jade, and gemstones. The gemstones were sparkling and noble, so there was no mistake. After a while, the things she picked out were placed in front of everyone. I'm done. Song Xiaoyu said carefully. What do you think? Jing Yunzhao smiled and said amiably to the young ladies around him. Those girls' interest had already been piqued. It was just that they didn't know how to say it earlier. Now that Jing Yunzhao had spoken first, they immediately began to comment. This dress is indeed beautiful, but it's a counterfeit. And the imitation is quite vulgar. What the hell are those 2 small wings on the shoulders? It seems to have been cut off by someone, one of them said. That's not all. There are so many clothes and bags here. Some are real and some are fake. There are styles from a few years ago and there are also styles from this year. She can't even choose a real one. She even used a gem to match the fake ones. If I were to go out in such clothes, I would rather die. Another person immediately shook his head. If you ask me, the scariest thing is this makeup. She can't even differentiate between water and breast. She can't even tidy up her own face. Which stupid stylist would dare to use such an assistant? Besides, were assistants so brave these days? I was just casually giving her a chance, but she was so self-righteous that she actually went forward to try it. Miss Jing, is this woman here to trick you? They were all young people, so their words were a little direct, but they were very clear. Even a blind person could see that Song Xiaoyu was not qualified to appear here, no matter what identity she had. And now, after seeing Song Xiaoyu's ability, everyone couldn't help but think deeply. The Su family only had Shenxi, who was the mistress of the family. The details of this banquet couldn't be handled by a child like Jing Yunzhao. So, everything had to be approved by Shenxi. A stylist was extremely important. But suddenly, a distant relative of Jing Yunzhao suddenly appeared and said a lot of nonsense. She was even so bad. Who would believe that she didn't do it on purpose? Chapter 1023. Everyone had been through this before. Some families even had complicated personnel. Usually, there were too many things like scheming against each other and fighting for the family property. They all had some understanding of this kind of means. The reason why they thought it was a misunderstanding before was that Shenxi usually treated people kindly. The second reason was that they thought it might be a coincidence. But now, the second reason seemed a bit too far-fetched. No one would be stupid enough to think that Shinshi was really as kind and tolerant as she looked. Usually, Shinshi could handle a lot of things in an orderly way without any flaws. Now, such a big mistake had happened right under their eyes. No matter how they looked at it, it seemed to be intentional. Maybe that kindness was just on the surface. After all, Mayor Su loved this niece very much, and young Master Su was a famous playboy. For this niece, Mayor Su might do something to harm his son's interests. As a mother, how could Shinshi accept it? So she secretly thought of ways to ruin her reputation. Everyone had a scale in their hearts and thought a lot. They just didn't say it on the surface. The housekeeper brought a few stylists over. Su Yuantek also began to interrogate, who brought this Song Xiaoyu here? Suddenly, a man stood up. The man was thin and a little effeminate. He looked like he lacked masculinity. At this time, his forehead was sweating. Is this how you serve? Su Yuantek didn't seem to be angry, but his gloomy tone made people feel cold all over. I'm sorry, Mayor Su. The assistant who was supposed to come with me was sick, so I found a temporary replacement. The man said quickly. You didn't tell me in advance when you changed the person. Su Yuantek asked again. He asked, but no matter what the result was, the seed of suspicion had been planted. No, Mrs. Su is very busy. I don't think she would notice such a small thing, so. The man said carefully. After finishing, he said, Mayor Su, Miss Jing, I'm really sorry. I really didn't expect her to do such a thing. This time, I will return the money. Su Yuantek simply nodded. It was just a deal, and the other party had already admitted his mistake. In front of others, he couldn't use violence to suppress him. But anyway, he didn't have a future as a stylist. Take them and get out of the Su family. Su Yuantek snorted coldly. How vexing. First, there was Fan Liqin. Now, there was this Song Xiaoyu. She was purposely trying to make Xiao feel even more frustrated. Jing Yunzhao didn't continue to ask. From the beginning, Shinshi had always done things flawlessly. He couldn't find any evidence, and it was the same this time. Even if he continued to ask, he was afraid that the stylist wouldn't say anything. It was better to just ask her to leave now. In short, she already had a plan in her heart, so the truth was not important. Once the trouble was gone, the scene became much more harmonious. There were also many men and women of the same age who took the initiative to approach her and chat with her. As the host, Jing Yunzhao treated the guests courteously and left a good impression on them. But the banquet had been going on for so long, Jing Yunzhao felt that someone was missing. After thinking carefully, her mind was fixed on Shintong. She and Shintong were business partners. Previously, she had helped Xiao Haiqing audition, so their relationship was getting closer. So, naturally, she unconditionally invited Shintong to her birthday party. With Shintong's personality, it was reasonable to say that she should have arrived a long time ago. But so much time had passed, and Shintong was nowhere to be seen. Who are you looking for? Your boyfriend. Hua Tianxian raised her eyebrows and laughed, deliberately provoking her. Why is there no man on your birthday party? Chapter 1024. As soon as Hua Tianxian spoke, Xiao Haiqing and the rest also remembered. No wonder they felt that this birthday party wasn't perfect. It turned out that an important person was missing. Yunzhao, where's Li Xiao? Xiao Haiqing was both concerned and gossipy. Jing Yunzhao couldn't help but sweat. How would I know? But the person I'm looking for isn't him. She didn't care about birthday gifts. Li Xiaoyun usually treated her well and cared about her in all aspects. That was enough. Besides, everyone was already paying attention to him today. If he were to appear at this time, it would probably shock everyone present. Although others might not know that Li Xiaoyun was old General Li's grandson, with his appearance, no matter where he appeared, he would be an eye-catching monster. Who else would I be waiting for if not him? Don't tell me you've changed your mind after such a long time. Xiao Haiqing deliberately joked. There were only a few men in this world who could subdue Yun Zhao. The way she looked at men was as if her eyes had grown to the top of her head, so those accidents were basically impossible. That Li Xiaoyun was the same. To be able to so willingly go along with Jing Yun Zhao's whims for so long, other people definitely wouldn't be able to hit him. Haiqing, I'm looking for Aunt Tong. Don't tell me you've forgotten about her. Jing Yun Zhao was speechless. Xiao Haiqing frowned and looked around. I looked around when I came out just now. I didn't see her. Are you sure you invited her today? Did she agree to come? I invited her. I called her again last night to confirm so that she wouldn't forget. Jing Yun Zhao sighed. But her phone is turned off now. I'm a little worried. Hua Tianxian also became serious when Shen Tong was mentioned. Jing do you think something happened to Aunt Tong? She's never like this. Every time my mother meets her, she arrives a long time ago. No, I'd better contact my mother and ask her to find someone to take a look. Now, many wretched uncles have designs on my Aunt Tong. It's been so many times. If it happens again this time, it'll be terrible. Hua Tianxian finished speaking and quickly made a call. Once the previous incident was mentioned, Jing Yun Zhao had a thought flash through his mind. He turned to look at Shen Shi, who was taking the initiative to chat with the ladies. This time, she wouldn't do it again, right? Why are you looking at her? Yun Zhao, you seem to have a problem with Shen Shi from the beginning. You doubted her about Song Xiaoyu just now. Are you doubting her now about Aunt Tong? Xiao Haiqing felt it. Do you still remember the poisoned wine in Aunt Tong's house? She did it, but there's no evidence. She doesn't treat her sister as she seems. Jing Yun Zhao said softly. Are you serious, Jing My Aunt Tong has a very high opinion of Shen Shi. When I chatted with her before, she often said that she wasn't as lucky as Shen Shi. From childhood to adulthood, no matter what she did, Shen Shi was more serious than her. Unlike her, she didn't last long in everything, whether it was studying or acting. Hua Tianxian didn't agree. After hanging up the phone, she continued to recall. Aunt Tong also said that when she was abroad, she didn't have a good life and didn't want to ask for friends. Shen Shi helped her a lot. She said that Shen Shi was gentle and generous. She was able to marry Mayor Su because of her personal charm. Personal charm. Jing Yun Zhao suddenly sneered. There were still people who knew the truth back then, but there were only a few of them. At that time, his eldest uncle got married very suddenly. Everyone felt strange. Did Aunt Tong say anything else? Or was there anything special between her and Shen Shi? Jing Yun Zhao asked again. He didn't dare to let go of any information. Chapter 1025. Hua Tianxian thought for a long time before she said, Actually, my mother and I only got to know Aunt Tong better after she came back to China. Aunt Tong looks weak, but she's actually very strong and has a lot of self-esteem. That's why she never talks to her friends about money. She only talks about her son and the interesting things that happened abroad. As for the things that are related to Shen Shi, there are some. I remember that when she first came back to China, I went to her shop to play. She said several times that she wanted to visit Shen Shi, but she couldn't because of various things. Later, Aunt Tong said that she felt that Shen Shi's life in the Su family wasn't very good. She didn't want her sister to know about it, so she was very worried. She even tried to find out more about Mayor Su. Also, there was one time when Suyu brought a concubine to the beauty salon, but they didn't recognize each other. Of course, I wasn't there at that time. It was my mother who told me. After all, Aunt Tong is Suyu's aunt. It's strange that they haven't met before. Hua Tianxian thought about it carefully and found that there were more and more strange things. Jing Er, does your uncle have any eccentricities? Does he abuse Shinshi at home? Hua Tianxian asked again. Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. My uncle is a gentleman. He's very principled. Then why doesn't Shinshi dare to let him see her sister? I dare say that Mayor Su still doesn't know what his sister-in-law looks like. Hua Tianxian shook her head and sighed. Could it be that Aunt Tong is beautiful, so Shinshi is afraid? Suchu chimed in weakly. Hua Tianxian heard this and silently gave her a thumbs up. Girl, your idea has a bright future. What kind of person was Mayor Su? He often had to go out to socialize, and the number of beautiful women he had seen could probably be piled up to form a city. Unless Shinshi was a pervert, she would only allow her husband to go out to meet others and not her sister. I'm just guessing. Aunt Tong is so beautiful and has acted in so many dramas. Most men of Uncle Su's age have improper thoughts about her. Cousin, am I right? Suchu expressed her thoughts with an innocent face. Shinshi should know that first uncle isn't the kind of person who values beauty. Jing Yunzhao shook his head. First uncle was even able to cripple his own son, so his wisdom was obvious. He was definitely more careful than anyone else, so how could he be charmed by a woman? Moreover, there were many beautiful women in the world. Although Shintong was indeed beautiful, she wasn't the only beauty. Now that Shintong was a little older, the youthful beauties outside were much more charming than her. Although they were joking around, the worry in their hearts did not lessen at all. However, there was no news at all. They could only wait patiently. Jing Yunzhao also hoped that Shintong's disappearance was just a coincidence. The birthday party lasted for a long time. The Su family was everywhere, and the sound of music was melodious. In the end, all parties left. When most of the guests left, Hua Tianxian received a call from Su family's mother. Her expression immediately became serious. Jing Er, something really happened to Aunt Tong. Hua Tianxian took a deep breath and said with an ugly expression, she went out this morning. I heard that she went to the market in the northern suburbs to buy something, but she was recognized by a lunatic who chased her all the way. Aunt Tong was driving her own car and didn't know where she was going. In the end, she got into a car accident and was sent to a small hospital in the northern suburbs. She was saved, but the accident was very serious. Now, she has been transferred to the hospital in the city. Her brain was damaged and we don't know when she will wake up. Chapter 1026. Hua Tianxian's expression was unusually ugly. She was definitely not joking. Everyone immediately quieted down. Let's go and take a look. Jing Yunzhao was about to get up. However, Hua Tianxian pulled him back. There's no need to go. She's out of danger now and hasn't woken up yet. My mother still has a few friends over there to help her. It's useless for us to go. At least she survived. Don't worry too much. We'll go after her condition stabilizes. Jing Yunzhao and the others thought about it and nodded in the end. Hua Tianxian's words made sense. Once she was in trouble, her friends would probably have gone to visit her. Patients needed to be quiet. Besides a few familiar faces, no one else would be able to see her. What about the person who chased after her? Did you catch him? Jing Yunzhao immediately asked. No. My mother said that she had someone check the surveillance cameras on the road. The car was stolen. The driver wore a mask, a hat, and gloves. He was fully armed. The roads in the northern suburbs are not as congested as in the city. Moreover, she left early, so there was almost no one there. The person escaped and couldn't be found. Hua Tianxian shook her head. This was the most infuriating part. Xiao Haiqing and Su Chu also knew Shintong. Putting aside the previous incident with the poisoned wine, both of their teams had a good impression of Shintong. Now that they heard that something like this had happened to her, their hearts were in a mess. That damn pervert. If I catch him, I'll beat him up first. Su Chu waved her fist angrily. To be honest, although she's unconscious, I'm actually relieved, Jing Yunzhao said seriously. She had been worried that something had happened to Shinshi. It would be terrible if it was a life-threatening incident. After all, Shinshi was indeed a ruthless person. For her own benefit, she might not care about her sister's life. Therefore, it was good that Aunt Tong was found. From now on, she would definitely be able to stay alive. Jing Yunzhao's suspicion towards Shinshi made Hua Tianxian ponder deeply. After all, she didn't know Shinshi very well, unlike Jing Yunzhao, who lived under the same roof with her every day. However, if Shinshi was really like what Jing Yunzhao said, then this person was really too sinister and terrible. Before today, everyone's impression of Shinshi was fixed on the 4 words, gentle and virtuous. Many people even said that the reason why Mayor Su was so successful was because of this woman behind him. But today's incident was proof that Shinshi was not as gentle and magnanimous as she appeared to be. The more Hua Tianxian thought about it, the more she felt uncomfortable. She used to have a good impression of Shinshi, mainly because Aunt Tong often mentioned this person in front of her. But now, she had more doubts in her heart. Seeing with one's own eyes was better than hearing with one's ears. Didn't she see the big show that Shinshi had prepared today? If it weren't for the traces of abuse on Jing Yunzhao's body, she was afraid that no matter how she explained, she would have a reputation of biting the hand that fed her. At this time, the few of them were chatting when suddenly, a tut-tut sound came from the sky outside. There were only a few guests left in this house, except for a few familiar ones. The sky outside was already dark. It was originally very quiet, so even the slightest movement at this time would be very abrupt. Don't tell me that your young Master Li is here. Hua Tianxian teased with a smile. Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. He got up and walked outside. Jing you're obviously very happy. Don't hold it in. Hua Tianxian said again. No. Jing Yunzhao refused to admit it. No. I don't know who's the one who keeps looking outside today. On a birthday like this, you don't want your boyfriend to show up at all. Anyway, I don't believe it. Hua Tianxian raised her head and looked proud. Chapter 1027. Jing Yunzhao was in a daze for a moment. She was nervous and expectant. Hua Tianxian was right. She thought that she didn't care and hoped that she wouldn't care. But the truth was, as the sun shone brightly in the sky and night fell, she became more and more anxious and complained a little. Li Xiaoyun hadn't appeared for a long time. If he forgot about today, she would be angry and disappointed. Hua Tianxian, Xiao Haiqing, and the others hugged Jing Yunzhao as they left the front hall and went out to take a look. Coincidentally, she bumped into Gan Jinchen and Tang Zihua, who had just barged in from the outside. Their faces seemed to be a little excited, and when they saw Jing Yunzhao, they said, Yunzhao, outside, it's very beautiful. Jing Yunzhao's face was full of suspicion. When she walked out to take a look, she was instantly stunned. There were more than a dozen helicopters hovering in the sky. They were making loud noises, but following the airflow created by the wings, pieces of red fluorescent things slowly fell. They were like fairies, covering the entire front yard of the Su family. The falling flowers even emitted a fragrant smell. Jing Yunzhao walked out in a daze. She couldn't help but reach out to catch a piece. When she took a closer look, she realized that they were real petals. They were very fresh and there were tens of thousands of them. The petals themselves seemed to have some fluorescent substance, so they emitted a light that contrasted with the red petals in the night. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating. It was as if there were countless red butterflies dancing. Unknowingly, there was a layer of red petals under her feet. It was like a red sea. It was very dreamy. Everyone was stunned. They probably wouldn't be able to see such a scene again in their lifetime. Su Chu and Xiao Haiqing quickly took out their phones to take pictures. But the pictures taken with their phones could never compare to the beauty of what they saw with their eyes. Jing Yunzhao had never seen this kind of flower before. In the memory of the spirit jade, there were only medicinal plants and herbs from China and some nearby countries. The fragrance of these flowers was very unique. If it was from her country, she would definitely know. In other words, Li Xiaoyun had gone to other places to prepare these flowers. Jing Yunzhao suddenly felt a lump in his throat. He looked up at the sky and saw a long rope drop down from one of the helicopters. Li Xiaoyun was slowly lowered down. Amidst the blossoming red light, he slowly approached. Their eyes met. Behind Jing Yunzhao, Su Yuantek had a look of surprise on his face. Obviously, he was not clear about the situation. Su Wanqing snorted coldly with a drooping face, but his eyes were still filled with amazement at the scene. This brat was thoughtful enough to prepare such a big gift. Compared to these glowing flowers, the fireworks and firecrackers prepared tonight were all vulgar. Ah Zhao, happy birthday. Li Xiaoyun landed on the ground and walked over. At the same time, he took out an exquisite little box and said, coming-of-age gift. Jing Yunzhao's heart thumped nervously. She took the box and opened it under Li Xiaoyun's watchful gaze. Jing Yunzhao had been worried that Li Xiaoyun would suddenly give her something that she could neither accept nor refuse at this time, such as a ring. But when she opened the box, she heaved a sigh of relief. There was a very small red bead in the box. The bead was engraved with patterns, and its fragrance was similar to the flower petals outside. In fact, it shone as brightly as the flower petals outside. It was extremely beautiful. This flower is called the Night Emperor. Its petals contain a phosphorescent substance. The duration of the petals' glow is limited. But this bead is something that I've specially extracted from the petals to study and solidify. As long as you and I live, its fragrance and light will last for a long time. Li Xiaoyun's gaze was gentle, as if he was waiting for her praise. Jing Yunzhao's eyes were a little wet. Thank you, but... Jing Yunzhao's eyes twinkled as she smiled and shook her head. From now on this day every year, it'll be fine as long as it stays by my side. Chapter 1028. Hearing this, Li Xiaoyun leaned over and gently touched her forehead. His lips were cold, making Jing Yunzhao's face a little hot. Not far away, Su Yuantek and Su Wanqing saw this scene. One frowned and the other looked angry, as if they wanted to kill someone. Li Xiaoyun chuckled as if he couldn't feel their hostility. Originally, he also wanted to prepare a ring for this coming-of-age ceremony. According to his grandfather's wishes, he could propose and get engaged so that the Li family could have a successor sooner. However, in his opinion, it was not time yet. Ah Zhao was only halfway through acknowledging her ancestors. His matter was not urgent. Of course, seeing how touched she was in front of him, he knew that his days of abstinence would not last long. By the way, you can keep this too. Li Xiaoyun raised his hand and a balloon fell from the sky. There was a cloth bag hanging under it. After receiving it, he directly stuffed it into Jing Yunzhao's hand. Jing Yunzhao opened it and took a look. Flower species. Yes, this Night Emperor is very rare. I almost plucked that flower to extinction this time. So. Li Xiaoyun smiled evilly. Jing Yunzhao opened her mouth, her face full of shock. Will the local residents be willing? Jing Yunzhao looked at this dreamy scene and did not know what to say. This is the reward for us brothers. Although this flower is beautiful, the breeding conditions are harsh, so it is not suitable for sale. The local situation is relatively poor, and the people are controlled by an organization that worships evil spirits. The previous task was to clean up the organization. After the task was done, they insisted on worshipping us as gods. After I refused, we simply asked for the Night Emperor as a reward to make them feel at ease. I see. No wonder you can get so many rare species at once. Jing Yunzhao glanced at him and said deliberately, but if you become a god in their eyes, won't you get more benefits? That place is very poor. The local people still use leaves to cover their bodies. When they see things flying in the sky, they are so scared that they crawl on the ground. I originally wanted them to agree to let the young people of the clan go to other places to see the world and find a way to survive, but they refused. A group of foolish people. Li Xiaoyun said disdainfully. He snorted softly and was very proud. Jing Yunzhao was speechless. So you brought this flower back just because it's more valuable? The moment I saw this flower, I wanted to give it to you. If I couldn't take it openly, I would have used force to suppress it and sweep it clean. Unlike now, I still left a few for them as souvenirs, Li Xiaoyun said without restraint. Jing Yunzhao blushed with shame. How many did he keep? He really had the cheek to say that. However, this flower was indeed breathtakingly beautiful, giving her the illusion that she was living in a dream. As the two of them chatted, 6 more people fell from the sky along the rope. They were the 6 brothers who had gone through fire and water with Li Xiaoyun. After a long time, the last petal fell from the sky. However, the entire Su family looked bright red. Xiao Haiqing and the others were stepping on the red petals as if they were having a snowball fight. They were extremely excited. Sister-in-law. Happy birthday. Qi Zhong and the others said politely. Their voices were loud and clear. The corner of Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. She turned to look at her 2 uncles. First uncle rubbed the space between his eyebrows as if he had a headache. Second uncle stared at Li Xiaoyun with a dark face. If she wasn't present, he would probably beat him up. Thank you. Jing Yunzhao licked her lips and thanked them a little embarrassedly. Although she had met them before, she didn't observe them closely. This time, Jing Yunzhao took the opportunity to look at them a little more. Chapter 1029. They were all about the same age. Li Xiaoyun was the oldest, but perhaps because of his skin color, the second oldest, Qi Zhong, looked a little older. Old third was a man with a mustache, but he didn't look old at all. Moreover, from his appearance, old third had a very low-key temperament. However, Li Xiaoyun had said before that old third was the most cunning among them. He had all kinds of ideas, was shrewd, and would never suffer losses. In addition to these, there was another point, and that was that he was somewhat vicious. Of course, that was only to his enemies. In contrast, the fourth oldest was different. He had a pair of peach blossom eyes, but there was a hint of melancholy in his eyes. His face was as white as paper and as warm as jade. Li Xiaoyun's previous evaluation of him was that he had an indifferent personality, just like those ancient Buddhist masters. However, although he was such a calm man, when he did things, he was very terrifying. He was proficient in all kinds of chemicals, and making all kinds of lethal bombs, poisons, and other things was a piece of cake for him. As for the fifth oldest, he had good eyesight, good hands and feet, good at hiding and stealing, and excellent at escaping. He was more cunning, and the least courageous. The sixth oldest. Jing Yunzhao's eyes jumped over. This guy had a pair of lecherous eyes. As long as he looked at a woman, his eyes would definitely light up. Usually, he would be the groom and the bride every night. He had the appearance of a handsome young man and was good at seducing women. His martial arts were good, but his ability to bewitch people was even better. It was said that many times, he had made the enemy's women change sides at the last minute. When he spoke sweet words, it was simply too sweet. Just as the sixth oldest was staring at him, Li Xiaoyun threw a cold knife at him. Suddenly, the sixth oldest smiled mischievously and lowered his head shyly with an aggrieved face. Jing Yunzhao thought that maybe one day, the sixth oldest would come to her for some medicine to cure some of his problems. Finally, there was the seventh oldest. It was said that he was very sensitive to mechanical things. Almost nothing with technological functions could hide in front of him, and he could dismantle it in minutes. When Li Xiaoyun was young, he cultivated in a very secretive place and learned all kinds of skills. These people were the descendants of the other families in the army. They followed Li Xiaoyun and were trained one after another. Each of them had their own specialties. However, in the beginning, there were more than just the 7 of them in this team. In fact, there were many of them. However, they were slowly eliminated or reduced to subordinates. Only the 7 of them stood out. They usually led the team on all kinds of missions. After so many years, they rarely lost. But thinking about it carefully, Li Xiaoyun's strength seemed to be his ability to command, and he should have dabbled in other aspects as well. The perfect man. Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips and chuckled. She held Li Xiaoyun's arm and led him to her 2 uncles. First uncle, second uncle, let me formally introduce him to you. He's Li Xiaoyun, my boyfriend, Jing Yunzhao said with a smile. There was a hint of pride and happiness in her voice, and her body naturally nestled next to him. They looked like a perfect match. Su Yuantek was a little worried at first, but when he saw Jing Yunzhao so happy, he immediately calmed down. He believed in Zhao's judgment. He knew the name Li Xiaoyun. His family background, ability were all outstanding. He was a good match. Looking at how attentive she was today, he was even more speechless. You little girl, why didn't you tell me earlier? Su Yuantek smiled helplessly. He could understand in his heart. They had not known each other for long, and she was a girl. It was indeed not easy to talk about such private matters. Chapter 10:30. Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips and smiled, then glanced at Su Wenqing. She reached out and tugged at the corner of his clothes, calling softly, "Second uncle." Usually, Jing Yunzhao almost never acted coquettishly, doing things with propriety and politeness like an adult. Many times, Su Wenqing felt that his niece was the same age as him, but now that he heard Jing Yunzhao's soft voice, he instantly softened. His whole body seemed to be floating, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise. "Xiao Zhao, do you really like him?" Su Wenqing coughed dryly, trying hard to restrain his excitement, and asked seriously. Jing Yunzhao nodded. "What's so good about him?" Su Wenqing still didn't give up and looked at Li Xiaoyun provocatively. "He has no selfish motives towards me," she said truthfully. It was impossible for her to fall in love with someone without a reason. She was naturally suspicious, cold, and a little arrogant. Although she had male friends, it was still different. If Gan Jinchen or Tang Zihua stood in her position as her boyfriend, they wouldn't be able to do what Li Xiaoyun did. She only wanted to find someone who treated her well. Although it was a little selfish, this was something that couldn't be changed. Xiao Zhao, men are different before and after marriage. You are beautiful, so of course he will spend all his effort to pursue you. But when he really gets you, then it's hard to say. Su Wanqing said earnestly and deliberately. Letting his precious niece be taken away by Li Xiaoyun, he felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. Second Uncle Su, don't compare me with ordinary men. Li Xiaoyun raised his eyebrows and directly retorted. You can say that you don't like my Xiao Zhao's appearance. That's right, and her company. Xiao Zhao is young, beautiful, and rich. What kind of man can't she find? Su Wanqing directly glared back. Second uncle, don't worry. I won't touch a single cent of her assets. Moreover, I can get someone to notarize the assets tomorrow and change all the assets under my name to her name. As for what I like about her. Second Uncle Su, when I met Zhao, she was still a Cinderella. I saw her walk step by step to where she is today. That's enough to prove it. Li Xiaoyun's eyes shone with confidence. A moment ago, in front of Jing Yunzhao, this man was unbelievably gentle, but now he was full of thorns. Su Wanqing choked and spat out a mouthful of blood. He gritted his teeth and thought for a long time before saying, there is one thing that I'm afraid you won't agree to, right? Xiao Zhao's identity is a little special. In the future, she must have a child with her surname to inherit her medical skills. Who knows, she might even have to give birth to another child with the surname Su to inherit her pharmaceutical skills. Su Wanqing snorted coldly. He did not believe that Li Xiaoyun could accept this. Any man would be unhappy to hear that their child had taken on another person's surname, right? Second Uncle Su, I think you're thinking too much. Li Xiaoyun suddenly laughed and was very arrogant. If Zhao is willing, it doesn't matter if the child's surname is Jing. After all, it's my child. Of course, there's no need for the surname Su. Second Uncle Su, you're also a man. You should be able to give birth yourself, right? When the time comes, I'll come back with Zhao to visit the elders often. If she wants to teach her future cousins how to make medicine, I'll be happy to cooperate. Li Xiaoyun emphasized the words together, as if he was afraid that Su Wanqing would ignore it. You agree. What if you only have one child and the surname is Jing? Su Wanqing was a little doubtful. Why not? The child is my Zhao's. What's the difference if it's her or mine? Li Xiaoyun chuckled, but his expression was very serious. Chapter 1031. Li Xiaoyun had some understanding of the Jing family situation. A family with 1,000-year-old legacy naturally couldn't be destroyed. As for the Li family, the old man was very magnanimous. Although he wanted to have a great-grandson and pass down the bloodline, it had nothing to do with the family name. Moreover, ever since Jing Yunzhao acknowledged his family, he had already thought of this and mentioned it to the old man in advance. The old man then said that it was a blessing for the Li family to be able to provide half of the bloodline inheritance of the Jing family's 1,000-year-old miracle doctor. He also said that during the war, the doctors from the Jing family and the Su family's huge amount of medicine had helped countless soldiers, so they were indebted to them. Li Xiaoyun's words completely stunned Su Wanqing. He frowned and stared at Li Xiaoyun as if he wanted to bore a hole through him. What are you trying to do? After a while, he squeezed out a sentence. Trying to do? Does marrying a wife and having a child count? Li Xiaoyun replied faintly. Jing Yunzhao's face turned red. Xiao Haiqing and the rest couldn't help but laugh. All right, Yuanqing, we've asked enough. Why are we blindly interfering with the younger generation's matters? The old man doesn't even care. Moreover, don't think that I don't know what you're feeling in your heart. Su Yuantek couldn't help but laugh. Just based on the fact that Li Xiaoyun dared to guarantee in front of him that he could have a child to inherit the Jing family business, he had nothing to say. As for what Su Wanqing cared about, as the eldest brother, he was very clear about it. Li Xiaoyun was only 4 or 5 years younger than Yuanqing. This lad from the Li family had always been a legendary figure before he was in his teens, causing the boys from various families to be envious, jealous, and hateful. Almost everyone had been stimulated by his excellence, including his younger brother. At this moment, Su Wanqing awkwardly turned his face away and snorted coldly. If he had known that this kid would become his nephew's son-in-law one day, he would have gone to the Li family to ask him out and teach him a lesson. Since Xiao Zhao likes it, then, reluctantly let it be. But remember, he's just a boyfriend. If he's not qualified, we can still change. Su Wanqing said harshly. But these words sounded weak and powerless. Second Uncle Su, instead of worrying about me and Xiao Zhao, why don't you find us a second aunt first? Otherwise, my cousin will be younger than my son. After Li Xiaoyun finished speaking, he smiled and hugged Jing Yunzhao. "Ah, Zhao, I haven't seen Grandpa for a long time. I still want to talk to him." As soon as he finished speaking, Su Yuantek, Jing Yunzhao, and the others walked back into the house, along with their brothers. When the brothers walked past Su Wanqing, they all grinned and said, "Hello, eldest sister-in-law's second uncle." Eldest sister-in-law's second uncle has worked hard. When Su Wanqing heard this, his face turned green. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Almost everyone had left, leaving only 2 little girls rolling around in the flower petals. How childish. Xiao Haiqing and Su Chu were scared by Su Wanqing's stare. They raised their heads and looked at him. "Second Uncle Su, is there anything else?" In the sky, the helicopter had already dispersed. Suddenly, the fireworks exploded, resonating with the red lights on the ground. It was a beautiful scene. Su Wanqing was stunned. "Are you an actress?" After a few seconds, Su Wanqing walked over and asked. Xiao Haiqing nodded. "What roles have you acted in?" Su Wanqing asked again. "Just some small roles. It's not worth mentioning." Xiao Haiqing was stunned. Did second Uncle Su go crazy because of young Master Li? Look, his eyeballs are not moving. What do you think is good about Li Xiaoyun? Su Wanqing asked again. Su Chu looked at him and suddenly felt that second Uncle Su was very strange. She thought for a while and ran away. Chapter 1032. Xiao Haiqing heard Su Wanqing's words. It seemed like he was hinting that she was interested in Li Xiaoyun. Her face instantly darkened. Second Uncle Su, young Master Li treats Yun Zhao very well. Xiao Haiqing frowned. She could joke about other things, but she couldn't joke about men. Otherwise, even a strong friendship wouldn't be able to withstand it. Ever since she met Jing Yunzhao, there had never been any misunderstandings. Now, she would never allow anyone to doubt her feelings for Jing Yunzhao, not even second Uncle Su in front of her. Su Wanqing frowned. He didn't feel that his question was inappropriate. But there are still many people who treat her well. She is still young. Xiao Haiqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Could it be that he was provoked by Jing Yunzhao, so he ran over to her to seek comfort? Was it because she had asked him to send her off previously? Was that why he thought he was closer to her? Second Uncle Su, I am on Yunzhao's side unconditionally. Yunzhao restrained herself because you are her uncle. But since you are so persistent, I have no choice but to be impolite. Xiao Haiqing was still holding a few flower petals in her hand. She pinched them and smiled. Although Yun Zhao and I were classmates in our first year of high school, we didn't interact much in the first half of the year. At that time, her reputation wasn't good, and she was very quiet. She didn't care about anyone who provoked her, so I looked down on her. Then, one day, she seemed to have an epiphany. She became sharp and ruthless to anyone who bullied her. She surprised me, and that's why we became good friends. I don't know why she treats me differently from others, but I'm clear that it's hard for anyone else to enter her heart. Even becoming friends is hard to come by. For Li Xiao to be able to become her boyfriend means that he's already inseparable from her life. Without him, Yun Zhao might still be able to live her life as usual, but I can guarantee that there will always be a piece missing in her heart that no one can replace. Although you are her uncle, you are late. You left her outside for so many years, and now you suddenly appear and want to interfere with her love life. I think that is too much. Xiao Haiqing smiled from the beginning to the end. She was polite. As an elder, it was natural for him to interfere with Jing Yunzhao. But the truth was, it also depended on whether the other party's personality was suitable. Jing Yunzhao had always been a suspicious person. Towards her family and friends, she was always worried about her gains and losses. As her family, they had to support her. Only then could she relax and be happy. And to put it bluntly, although Su Wenqing and Jing Yunzhao were related by blood, compared to Li Xiaoyun, he was more important. Su Wenqing pursed his lips as he listened. His eyes were deep in thought. He naturally knew that Li Xiaoyun must be outstanding to be able to gain Xiao Zhao's approval, but he was reluctant. She was only 18 years old, and Li Xiaoyun was already 27 years old. Such an old man must be anxious to get married, but he still wanted Xiao Zhao to stay at home for a few more years. Looking at Su Wenqing's uncertain face, Xiao Haiqing's heart was pounding. What was this person thinking? If it wasn't for the fact that he was Yun Zhao's uncle, he really wanted to knock him out and forget about it. His dilly-dallying really made people anxious. Wasn't it just his niece having a boyfriend? He was a man, and he would find a wife in the future. Wasn't it the same? If that guy doesn't treat Yun Zhao well, you have to tell me, Su Wenqing said after a while. Xiao Haiqing rolled her eyes and nodded with a smile. However, she couldn't help but grumble in her heart. Compared to Li Xiaoyun treating Jing Yunzhao badly, she believed that Su Wenqing would find an aunt who couldn't accept Jing Yunzhao in the future. Chapter 1033. There were some things that couldn't be said in front of Su Wenqing, so after Xiao Haiqing responded, she quickly returned to the living room. Thinking of Su Chu, she couldn't help but scold her for being disloyal and snorted softly. Su Wenqing looked at Xiao Haiqing's back and frowned. He glanced at the place where she had just been and shook his head. It was a mess. She was already so old, yet she still liked flowers so much. Wasn't it just a few pieces of glowing stuff? What was there to see? However, her figure was not bad and her looks were passable. It was just that her temper wasn't very good. She was too straightforward. With this kind of temper, she would be at a disadvantage outside, right? Su Wenqing stayed outside alone for a long time, muttering to himself while looking at the beautiful scenery. His face was full of disdain, but there was some contradiction in his heart. He felt that Li Xiaoyun was indeed attentive and not bad. Su Yuantek and the others ignored his schizophrenia and didn't try to persuade him at all. As Su Wenqing's elder brother, Su Yuantek was very clear in his heart that his younger brother definitely knew that Li Xiaoyun was very good, but he just wanted to go against him. Just like any father-in-law in the world, he didn't like his son-in-law no matter how he looked at him. Even if an angel came, he still felt that he wasn't worthy of his daughter. The lively day ended with the beautiful and splendid fireworks. In the night, Jing Yunzhao slept deeply. In her dream, she was surrounded by a sea of red, and the man who made her heart flutter fell from the sky. The next day, the house was still filled with the smell of yesterday's alcohol and the air was very soft. However, before Jing Yunzhao went downstairs, the living room was a serious scene. "Brother, do you believe that yesterday's incident was a coincidence? Does that song Xiaoyu have anything to do with sister-in-law?" Su Wenqing's face was cold as he started to settle old scores. Su Yuantek sighed and leaned back. A trace of deep meaning flashed in his eyes. He had long felt that something was wrong. Zhao was very polite to everyone in the Su family except for Su Yu and Xin Shi, even if they were the housekeeper or the servants. Moreover, Shi and Xin Shi seemed to be at loggerheads from the first day they met. This situation was somewhat abnormal. It was not possible that Zhao did not like Xin Shi to be her aunt, because Xin Shi was a person who was kind to everyone. Even if she did not like them in her heart, she would not hit a smiling person. Unless something happened between the two of them that they didn't know about. "Yesterday, I heard that sister-in-law's younger sister was hospitalized." Xiao Zhao seemed to be very concerned about her. "Brother, could it be related to that woman?" Su Wenqing opened his mouth again and continued, "The two sisters can't possibly like the younger sister and not the older sister, right? Could it be that younger sister said something in front of Xiao Zhao? Xin Shi's younger sister is called Shintong." Su Yuantek thought for a moment and asked, "Brother, you haven't seen her before?" Seeing Su Yuantek's reaction, Su Wenqing also felt a little strange. "I haven't seen any of your sister-in-law's relatives." Su Yuantek shook his head. "When I first got married, I also mentioned that I wanted to see her, but at that time, your sister-in-law's parents had passed away and her younger sister had gone abroad, so it was delayed until now. A long time ago, someone suddenly told me that my younger sister-in-law had returned from abroad. At that time, I told Xin Shi again and asked if she wanted to invite the other party to the house, but Xin Shi refused. At that time, Xin Shi said that he was busy with work, and that Shintong usually found it difficult to find time, so there was no need to make special arrangements. He thought that anyway, this marriage was similar to a contract. Since Xin Shi cared about it, he did not pay attention to it anymore. Chapter 1034. Su Wenqing was shocked. His brother and sister-in-law had been married for more than 20 years, but his brother had never even met his sister-in-law. This was too unbelievable. Even if the relationship between the husband and wife was not good, their families would still have some interactions, right? Then you don't know what sister-in-law's sister is doing now. And who she married. Xiao Zhao seems to be very close to her. I think it's necessary to investigate, right? Su Wenqing said as he took the tea from the servant. I know a bit about it. I remember that your sister-in-law once mentioned that her sister was an actress. She was quite famous in the past, but she was bullied by people in the industry and got pregnant. At that time, your sister-in-law felt very guilty and said that she shouldn't have let her enter the entertainment industry. Otherwise, she wouldn't have become like that. So, I think she must be a woman who doesn't know how to behave properly. Xin Shi thought that she was a bad influence and didn't want me to meet her. It's normal. Su Yuantek dug through his memories and recalled what Xin Shi had said. Another actress. Su Yuanqing's brows were furrowed into a knot. He couldn't help but feel unhappy when he thought of Xiao Zhao's friend. Brother, Xiao Zhao should be going to the hospital to visit your sister-in-law in the next 2 days. Why don't you go with her and see if she's round, square, or flat? If her character is bad, it's best to think of a way to stop Xiao Zhao from interacting with her. Of course, if she's not bad, then sister-in-law, there must be something wrong with her. Su Wenqing reminded him. Su Yuantek nodded. There were many things that needed to be done. Yesterday, in front of so many people, he couldn't interrogate the stylist. But now, he didn't have to worry so much. After Jing Yunzhao went downstairs, the two uncles suddenly had a tacit understanding and changed from serious to caring. The birthday party was over, so Jing Yunzhao didn't want to keep Grandpa Gon and the others at the Su family for too long. After all, it was the new year, and the Gon family had to have a reunion dinner. After breakfast, the Tang family's car arrived and picked up Tang Zihua. Su Wanqing continued to be the driver and was responsible for sending Grandpa Gon and the others home. The Su family immediately became cold and cheerless. Xiao Haiqing's one-day holiday was over. She had gone to the set. In order to facilitate the filming, she probably would not come back at night. Jing Yunzhao suddenly felt empty around him. However, there was something outside that could divert Jing Yunzhao's attention. In a single night, the incident of the female student being forced to death by Fan Liqin had once again fermented, and it was getting out of hand. In the past, countless people had cursed the female student for being unfilial and angering her mother to death. Now, there were even more people who were repenting for their lost lives. Fan Liqin's deceit of the people and his attitude of disregarding life made countless people furious. This time, Fan Liqin was like a rat crossing the street. Everyone wanted to beat him up. Fan Liqin's electronics brand instantly became the target of public criticism. The resistance was great, and many of the franchise stores were collectively condemned. The entrance was a mess, and under the pressure of the public, they couldn't even open their doors. Before this, Jing Yunzhao had asked Pak Yuan to investigate the flaws in Fan Liqin's products. He took this opportunity to announce it. However, in terms of Fan Liqin's current situation, this news was just a drop in the ocean. This was because other media outlets also took advantage of this and ruthlessly set fire to it. Fan Liqin would let people exaggerate the facts of the news and cause the death of the female student. Naturally, other people would do the same. Thus, this day, Fan Liqin's evil deeds were everywhere. Chapter 1035. It was no secret that Fan Liqin was a pervert. Therefore, there were people who specifically targeted this point and fiercely reported it, saying that he had forced female students and had kept many women as his mistress. In addition, there were also people who revealed the dangers and side effects of his company's products. The truth and the lies were mixed together, and it was already deeply ingrained in the eyes of the public. Even if someone tried to forcefully clear his name, it would be impossible. Such a large company with so many products had suddenly been removed from the shelves of various shopping malls. His own exclusive stores couldn't even open. The loss was not small. Fan Liqin only felt that he was in a terrible fix. However, the public had always been short-tempered. As long as he could endure this period of time, it was still possible for him to rise again in the future. After all, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. However, the problem was that everyone now knew that he had offended the Su family. Without even waiting for Su Yuantek to open his mouth, there were already people who had taken the initiative to investigate the company's accounts. With internal and external troubles, it was simply unbearable. Jing Yunzhao knew in her heart that she didn't even need to personally do anything. Fan Liqin could walk step by step towards his own death. What did the public hate the most? It was deception, especially when it was a shocking lie that involved a human life. If Fan Liqin hadn't wronged that female student over the compensation, she wouldn't have been so stupid as to commit suicide. She had died because of public opinion. It could be said that everyone who had attacked her online and in real life were her murderers, and the mastermind who had forced everyone to become her murderers was the high and mighty boss Fan. In the Fan family's mansion, the servants had almost all left. In the past, being a nanny for a large family like the Fan family not only paid a high salary, but also gave them a lot of face. However, now that people heard the 3 words, Fan Li Qin, they immediately became very sensitive. No one wanted to be implicated by a boss who didn't have many feelings for them. One by one, they took their pay from Mrs. Fan and hurriedly left. They're all a bunch of snobs. If they want to leave, then leave. Why are you still paying them? Wastrel woman. Fan Li Qin sat on the sofa and was so angry that he directly smashed his cup. Her twin sons shrank back in fear and hid behind Mrs. Fan. Mrs. Fan was dressed plainly. She wasn't young and looked a little submissive. Although she hated the man in front of her, she didn't want to continue being a woman of the Fan family. She wasn't jealous or dissatisfied with the pair of sons who didn't belong to her. You scared them. Mrs. Fan's voice was hoarse and weak. After her daughter took the 2 younger ones away, she continued, send Xingning and Xinghao to their mother. What do you mean? This is my son. Why did he give it to that little bitch? What the hell are you thinking about all day at home? Can you not add to the mess at this time? Fan Li Qin scolded. Mrs. Fan's body subconsciously stiffened, but she quickly adjusted. She gritted her teeth and said, Fan Li Qin, stop daydreaming. While there's still time, send the 2 younger ones out. I've had enough. All these years, I've had to endure your woman, your illegitimate daughter, and even help you take care of your illegitimate son. I'm not even as good as a nanny in this family. Just right, let's agree to a divorce now. From now on, you go your way and I'll go mine. We'll never see each other again. Now that my daughter has grown up, I don't have any scruples. Pa. As soon as Mrs. Fan finished speaking, Fan Li Qin directly rushed up and fiercely slapped her. I think you're tired of living. Why don't you take a piss and look in the mirror? I haven't even despised you yet, and you dare to divorce me. Scram. I'll beat you to death if you keep talking. Chapter 1036. If it had been before, Mrs. Fan wouldn't have dared to say another word. But now, she had the courage. In the past, Fan Li Qin was the boss Fan that everyone respected. At that time, her daughter was still young. She didn't have the power or the money to take back custody of her daughter, so she had to endure. She had to endure the disgust and loathing she felt for her husband. But now, it was different. Her daughter had grown up, and Fan Li Qin would soon fall from power. Her daughter had already told her everything that had happened in the Su family. She knew in her heart that this time, the Fan Li Qin had offended the rich and powerful. Even if Fan Li Qin had 3 heads and 6 arms, he wouldn't be able to turn things around. She also didn't have to worry about her daughter and herself being threatened by Fan Li Qin after the divorce. Everything was starting to develop in a good direction. She didn't even dare imagine that her wish would suddenly come true one day. She had even thought that the only way she could escape the Fan family in this lifetime was to exhaust this man to death. Fan Li Qin, even if you beat me to death, I will divorce you. When I said this to you, I was already prepared. My lawyer is already on the way. In addition, I have to thank you for this slap and your illegitimate children. It gave me the right to get back what my daughter deserves. Mrs. Fan covered her face and felt a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. Even though she knew that it wouldn't be long before all of the family's finances were seized and used up, her and her daughter's reputation was more important than anything else. With this evidence, she and her daughter were victims and wouldn't be affected too much. Her daughter had performed well in school and received a scholarship. In the future, she might even be sent abroad. Her future was limitless. When Fan Li Qin heard this, he immediately understood what she meant. He was angry, furious, and somewhat in disbelief. His father had married this woman on his behalf. He had said that she was virtuous and thrifty. Although he did not like her very much, she was still a woman. Her temperament made her very suitable to be Mrs. Fan, and she could not control him. He had not expected that one day she would suddenly say something like this, even when he was at his most troubled time. He immediately reached out and grabbed his wife, wanting to give her a good beating. Fan Weiwei, who was not far away, saw this and quickly rushed over to help. "Damned girl, you dare to make a move on your old man. See how I'll teach you a lesson today." Fan Liqin was even angrier. He might as well beat the two of them together. Although there weren't many people in the Fan family, there were still a few high-priced security guards left. When the security guards heard the commotion and came over to take a look, they were shocked. They looked at each other and didn't know what to do. After a while, one of them couldn't stand it anymore and hurriedly went forward to help, pulling the security guards away. The security guard was tall and strong, so Fan Liqin was naturally no match for him. Another wave of insults immediately followed. There were quite a number of reporters surrounding the Fan Liqin residence. The security guards had left their posts without permission, so they did not stop them. As a result, Fan Liqin's fierce side was captured on camera. The mother and daughter hugged each other and cried bitterly. Their bruised and swollen faces were truly frightening. Looking at the two illegitimate children, they were so frightened that they curled up in bed, looking pitiful and miserable. These reporters were already worried that they wouldn't be able to dig up any new information about Fan Liqin. Now that they had a chance, it would be a waste not to use it. Soon, the public outside learned of another crime of him abusing his wife and daughter. Mrs. Fan directly filed for divorce in court. Although it would still take some time, the future was still somewhat bright. At the same time, the Tan parents also saw the news. When they saw the picture of their grandson curled up in a corner and crying, they were extremely distressed. Thinking about it again, if they took the children back now, they might be able to ask Fan Liqin to pay a large sum of money to support them. Naturally, they couldn't help but get involved. It was a pity that these parents didn't have a thorough understanding of certain matters. Fan Liqin was indeed rich, but it was only temporary. Chapter 1037. Compared to Tanxi's parents, Tanxi's attitude towards her son was a bit better. She had been crazy these past few days, but when she saw her son's frightened appearance, she immediately cried until she no longer resembled a human. She was vain and loved money, but there had been times when she longed for love and family. The mistakes she had made these past few years had caused her to lose all standing and reputation. She even disliked this unbearably dirty body of hers. After all, she had carried her son for 10 months. Although the child was still young, he knew how to be considerate of his mother. He wasn't like her parents, who had always instigated and controlled him, using him as a tool to make money. Fan Liqin's matter had been circulating outside for quite a few days, and there were signs of it slowly dying out. But at this time, Fan Liqin had already changed into a different person. And the suppression of other companies had already begun. This noisy new year didn't make him feel the slightest bit of joy. There was only endless despair and pain. The small Fan Liqin family naturally couldn't fight against so many big families. It didn't take long for them to completely decline. The person in charge of the media company that Fan Liqin had invested in was arrested for spreading rumors, damaging other people's reputations and causing death. Fan Liqin's company also completely stopped operating. The stock price plummeted, debts came to an end, and the couple divorced. Even his most beloved son had now been snatched away by a woman he had previously looked down on. He had fallen from heaven to hell in a single day. If you asked who Fan Liqin hated the most, it would probably only be Jing Yunzhao and Pak Yuan. The moment Fan Liqin's family property had been confiscated and he had been forced to live on the streets, Pak Yuan had appeared in front of him with an arrogant attitude that he had previously been unable to accept. Pak Yuan was a gentleman. He was never a man who would hit someone when they were down, but Jing Yunzhao was. She didn't care if others didn't treat her well. It didn't matter if others misunderstood or disliked her, but she couldn't tolerate anyone insulting or bullying her. Fan Liqin should have been prepared to be tortured to death by her after what she said. She held a grudge like that, but what could she do? A fallen phoenix was inferior to a chicken. Without power and money, Fan Liqin couldn't live an easy life. Just those women that he had looked down on before were enough to make him wish he was dead. A person like Fan Liqin should always be allowed to see the person he hated standing above him, with no possibility of surpassing him in this lifetime. As for the Tan family, there was an additional pair of children. After being happy for a few days, the parents thought of a practical problem. The two of them were old, and their pension was pitifully small. Now, it was really difficult for them to raise two more grandchildren. You're still young. Hurry up and find someone to marry. I really don't know why I gave birth to you in the first place. Mother Tan complained. She still doted on her daughter, but she felt annoyed after looking at her for a long time. Especially now that Pak Yuan was doing so well, her daughter couldn't even see her relatives and friends because of the rumors. She had lost her whole family. She felt terrible in her heart and kept thinking that it would be good if she could start over again. The more she thought about it, the more resentful she felt. When Tan Shi heard this, she looked at her parents expressionlessly and walked over. Mom, I want money. What do you want money for again? When Mother Tan heard this, she was instantly angry. Are you going to give it or not? If you don't give it, I won't change the child's surname. Tan Shi had already grasped her parents' Achilles' heel. How much do you want this time? Mother Tan was a little unhappy. However, she knew that her husband was most dissatisfied that she didn't give birth to a son in this lifetime. Fortunately, now that her grandson could also become a grandson, the Tan family would have a successor in the future, so the surname had to be changed. 30,000. Tan Shi was straightforward. Chapter 1038. 30,000 yuan wasn't a small sum for the Tan family. Moreover, Tan Shi had been asking for money for various reasons over the past few days. At first, she said that she wanted to sue Fan Liqin to get the child back. Therefore, Mr. and Mrs. Tan were very straightforward and gave her 100,000 yuan. Later, she said that the child was taking the child for a full-body checkup. They felt that it was reasonable, so they gave her another 10,000 yuan. Almost every day, there were various reasons that forced them to agree. In total, they had already given their daughter 200,000 yuan. Now that they heard that Tan Shi was asking for money, Mr. and Mrs. Tan felt that something was wrong. You're out of money, You've been asking for a lot of money recently. Did you spend it all on lawyers? I don't believe you. Give me a bill. Mr. Tan suddenly said. When Tan Shi heard that, she snorted coldly. No. Mr. Tan was about to hit her. When Tan Shi saw that, she dragged her two sons out of the door. I'm going to take our sons out shopping. If you want to hit me, we'll talk about it later. Mr. Tan's anger was stuck in his chest, and he couldn't spit it out. After Tan Shi left, there was no news of her. The grandson in their hands was gone, and the parents were so anxious that they were going crazy. Most importantly, if the two of them fell sick and died, who would clean up after them? However, no matter how angry they were, they couldn't find her. It was as if she had disappeared from the face of the earth. Before she left, Tan Shi sent a text message to Pak Yuan. It was a simple, I'm sorry. However, whether it was a text message or a phone call, Pak Yuan had completely blocked Tan Shi's name. Therefore, he didn't receive any messages. He was destined to have no more interactions with this person. After the new year, everything slowly quieted down. Jing Yunzhao read books, studied medicine, and fell in love every day. His days were very fulfilling. When school was about to start, they found a day when Xiao Haiqing wasn't busy. The two of them went to the hospital to visit Shintong, and eldest uncle personally drove her to the hospital. Some time ago, the number of friends who had almost filled up the ward had finally decreased. After all, everyone was more busy after the new year. Shintong's staff had hired a professional nurse to take care of her. In addition, her son had returned from abroad, so she could rest assured. Shintong was still unconscious. When Jing Yunzhao arrived, she was lying on the bed. Her face was pale, and she looked extremely pitiful. She was being kept alive by an IV drip, but there was a fair-skinned boy sitting beside her. He looked worried and tired. This boy should be Antong's son, Shinhong. Jing Yunzhao had often heard Hua Tianxian mention this person before. He had heard that he was doing very well abroad. He was only 21 or 22 years old and was studying at a famous university overseas. He was about to graduate soon and had participated in various competitions. Since he was in his teens, he had won many awards. He was the man that Shintong was most proud of. However, this was the first time Jing Yunzhao had seen him. The moment Shinhong saw someone coming over, he immediately got up to welcome. After all, Su Yuantek was an elder. Although he was unfamiliar with the person on the bed and the person in front of him, he was still this boy's uncle. Therefore, he took the initiative to ask, How is your mother? The doctor said that her condition is stable, but we don't know when she will wake up. It could be 10 days or half a month, or it could be a year and a half, or it could even be that she will never wake up. Shenhong smiled bitterly. Although he had lived abroad since he was young, he spoke fluent Mandarin. But it's okay. Mommy has always been lucky. I believe that she will wake up. By the way, I still don't know who you are. Shenhong restrained his sadness and asked politely. Chapter 1039. Su Yuantek felt a little awkward. They were close relatives, but now they didn't even know each other. It was really embarrassing. I'm your uncle. I didn't expect to meet you in this way. Su Yuantek patted Shinhong's shoulder. You're so young, but you're already shouldering such a big responsibility. You're really amazing. If you need anything, just let me know. I'll help as much as I can. Shinhong was stunned when he heard this. Uncle. This kind of creature. No, it was this kind of name. Although it wasn't the first time he heard it, it was really quite unfamiliar. He knew that he had an aunt, but he had never met her. He had only seen the photo his mother sent him. She was quite beautiful and looked very gentle and kind. He also heard that his mother was very well taken care of by her in the capital. Unfortunately, when his mother was in the accident, his aunt had already come over. He had only been back for 2 or 3 days, so he didn't meet her. Thank you, uncle. Shenhong quickly expressed his gratitude. Then, he looked at the two girls. A trace of surprise and affection flashed in his eyes. This is my niece. She's almost like a daughter. She's also your cousin. Her name is Jing Yunzhao. Next to her is her classmate, Xiao Haiqing. The two of them are very close to your mother. This time, they specially came to see her. Su Yuantek introduced. He couldn't help but have a good impression of Shinhong. This child looked very talented and was very handsome. He could see that he was somewhat similar to Shintong on the hospital bed, but he was more masculine. The pair of starry eyes under the sword-like eyebrows were especially beautiful. He was also very tall, about 1.85 meters. His body was neither fat nor thin, and he looked very strong. His every move made him look very cultured. Even he couldn't help but feel a bit of affection. Originally, he thought that Shintong was probably not a good person. But now that he saw that her son was so sensible, he had some doubts in his heart. Parents had a great influence on their children. Shintong raised her son alone. It was rare for her to be able to raise a child like this. At this time, Shintong greeted Jing Yunzhao and Xiao Haiqing respectively. He brought 3 clean cups and poured water into them. Jing Yunzhao sat beside Shintong's bed. Xiao Haiqing stared at him. "Yunzhao, take a look at Auntie Tong. When will she wake up?" Jing Yunzhao nodded, but he caught a glimpse of the nurse who came in. "Let's wait." After all, this was a hospital. Even if she could treat it, without Shintong's permission, it would not be easy to do it. Besides, if the hospital knew about it, they would not be satisfied. Xiao Haiqing understood and did not ask. However, Shintong clearly didn't know much about the hospital's rules. He asked suspiciously, "Little cousin knows how to treat patients. She has some skills. Let her take a look at your mother. Maybe she can wake up earlier." Su Yuantek didn't care about his niece stealing the limelight. They couldn't bear with it for the sake of the hospital's reputation. When Shintong heard that, he became more energetic. "Little cousin, are you a national healer?" "Although I'm overseas, I'm very interested in national martial arts." It's a pity that those who are proficient in national martial arts overseas are more or less deceiving the public. Not many of them are capable. If you can, I don't mind you taking a look at my mother. Most people would have scruples about Jing Yunzhao's medical skills because of her age. But in Shintong's heart, ability had nothing to do with age. Since Auntie Tong's son said so, Jing Yunzhao did not refuse. She reached out to take Auntie Tong's pulse and checked her tongue and pupils. After a while, Jing Yunzhao thought about it and said, "It can be treated, but it requires acupuncture. Once a day for 3 days. But during these 3 days, you have to stop giving her medicine. Of course, the nutrient solution is an exception." Chapter 1040. When Xiao Haiqing heard that it could be treated, she immediately let out a sigh of relief. However, when she heard that he had to stop the medication, she became worried. This Shintong wouldn't dare to take the risk, right? Moreover, if the hospital knew that he had unilaterally stopped the medication, they wouldn't be happy. "Are you confident?" Su Yuantek asked seriously. Although he hadn't seen Jing Yunzhao treat patients, he had heard a little about it from the old man. Even Uncle Gon was full of praise for her. It was obvious that she had real skills. Jing Yunzhao nodded. "As long as you do as I say, there won't be a problem." After Su Yuantek heard this, he looked at Shintong and saw that he was frowning in thought. He looked a little serious. After thinking for a long time, he asked, "Little cousin, have you treated patients before? How many cases have there been, and what's the success rate?" "There are about a few hundred people who have been treated by me. There are also some who have been treated by other doctors. As for the success rate, it's currently about 90%. Jing Yunzhao replied. When she was in Huaning County, her grandfather had pushed many patients to her, and the patients would introduce more patients to her. However, the number wasn't a lot. However, she would also visit with Grandpa Gon. When her grandfather didn't have any patients, she would go to Grandpa Gon's clinic to help. After coming to the capital, she went to Immortal Crane Hole. Although she only went there a few times, the number of patients she saw every day was not small. She was a doctor, not a god. She couldn't treat all illnesses, so she only said that it was currently 90%. This percentage could go down or up in the future, but it wasn't the most important thing. However, the nurse who was quite tall when Jing Yunzhao said big words, curled her lips and said, "The medication can't be stopped. Otherwise, it won't be good if there are problems with the body's organs. Little cousin, if I treat her, will it be dangerous?" Shenhong thought for a moment and asked again. "It would be a lie to say that it's not dangerous. Everyone has an Achilles heel, and if there's a deviation in the acupuncture points during acupuncture, it will cause great harm to the body. However, if I don't treat her with acupuncture, the longer the delay, the lower the possibility of her waking up. Of course, it's not that she can't wake up, but it will depend on a miracle. However, how many miracles do you think there are in this world? Moreover, if she wakes up too late, her body's functions will definitely worsen, and it will affect her life in the future." Jing Yunzhao spoke the truth. In her current condition, if she didn't wake up, then she would wake up. Lying in bed for a long time, even her muscles would atrophy. Even if Shenhong took good care of her and gave her frequent massages to promote her blood circulation, it still couldn't be compared to her daily exercise. Hearing this, his face was. "Shenhong, don't worry. Yun Zhao's medical skills are really good. We have a close relationship with Aunt Tong, so we won't harm her." Xiao Haiqing said. "There's no need to be too anxious. Just give me a call when you think about it, but it's best not to be too late. Otherwise, the difficulty of the acupuncture will increase by a lot." It was normal for Shenhong to be worried, so Jing Yunzhao comforted him. "If there's a chance, I want to see you treat her with my own eyes before I can decide whether to ask for your help," Shenhong said apologetically. Jing Yunzhao thought for a moment and agreed. "No problem, I can do it tomorrow." After the new year, she still hadn't gone to the red-crowned crane hole. She reckoned that the group of old doctors would privately say that she was lazy. She wasn't really lazy. Ever since she treated so many patients for the first time, the group of old doctors became more and more interested in her. Every time she went, she would be so busy that she didn't even have time to drink water. Thus, she might as well split the time so that the group of old doctors wouldn't become more and more out of tune. Chapter 1041. Shenhong saw that Jing Yunzhao agreed so readily, and he trusted him a little. The nurse next to him was getting more and more disdainful. She felt that handsome Shen had met a swindler. This hospital was extremely famous in Jingdu. It had the best equipment and treatment methods in all aspects. Because it was Shentong who was hospitalized this time, the nurses in the hospital paid more attention to him. Shentong's son, Shenhong, had become the most popular patient's family member in the hospital in a short time. Almost all the young nurses would take the opportunity to chat with Shenhong. She didn't expect that she would see handsome Shen being deceived today. After these three people left, she had to properly advise Shenhong. After the nurse cast a concerned look at Shenhong, she reluctantly left the ward. The few of them chatted a little more. Su Yuantek also wanted to inquire about Shentong's past, so he kept asking questions. However, the more he asked, the more he felt that Shentong was admirable. Pregnant at a young age and living alone abroad, it was incredible to raise a child like this. Moreover, although this Shenhong is young, he knows a lot of truth. He knows a lot about the knowledge of various countries. He speaks clearly and logically. Moreover, at a young age, he has published many papers on psychology and won many awards. In addition, he has also studied criminal psychology and case detection abroad, which surprised him a little. Not to mention Su Yuantek was shocked, even Jing Yunzhao didn't expect that Shenhong, who looked so gentle, would study such a stimulating profession. "Do you want to be a policeman in the future? I'm afraid you have to be good at martial arts." Su Yuantek was in a good mood and said with a smile. "Uncle, don't worry. I learned fighting, judo, taekwondo, and other martial arts abroad. I also have some understanding of guns and knives. Those things can't stop me. As long as I don't meet a martial arts master, I can protect myself. Shenhong also felt that chatting with Su Yuantek had broadened his horizons, so his answer was very straightforward. When he said this, Jing Yunzhao and Xiao Haiqin couldn't help but exclaim. They didn't see it. When they first saw Shenhong, both of them felt that he was a young scholar. Su Yuantek nodded approvingly. Amazing. Other than that, what are your hobbies? It's nothing special. When I'm free, I climb mountains, run, swim, or watch the stars to release my stress. But seeing mommy like this, I feel a little regretful. If I had been a doctor back then, I might have been able to use my own judgment to understand her situation. And it's a pity that the mentors I know are all forensic specialists. Shenhong shook his head with some regret. You don't have to blame yourself. I didn't expect things to turn out this way at that time. However, I heard that you know a forensic instructor. It seems that you have done some research in forensic science. Su Yuantek was deeply interested. I roughly know some basic knowledge. I learned it to solve cases. Although Shenhong said modestly, he did not hide the confidence in his eyes. In the past, he did want to be a doctor, but later, he participated in a lot of detective games abroad and read a lot of detective novels. Gradually, he became interested in solving cases and solving mysteries. In his mother's words, no matter what he wanted to do, he should do it if he liked. There was no harm in learning more. Therefore, he was very free to develop his career abroad. In addition to professional things, he also learned a little about most of the things that interested him. Chapter 1042. Su Yuantek praised Shenhong even more. Have you ever thought about returning to China after graduation? Uncle can help you in this regard. As long as your ability is up to par, I can definitely transfer you to the department you want to go to. Su Yuantek asked directly. There's no need to trouble Uncle. Actually, I've already sent my resume here before I return to China. As long as I graduate, I can immediately go to work. Shenhong refused. Although he and his mother lived abroad for many years, they had no choice at the time. If they were in China, the mother and son would not be able to live a peaceful life. However, so much time had passed, and many things had become dull. Naturally, they had to return to their roots. Jing Yunzhao listened to the two chatting happily and could not help but feel a little emotional. His uncle might not even be so happy chatting with his own son at home. Su Yu's temper and personality could not even compare to a finger of Shenhong's. Oh right, your cousin. Su Yuantek wanted to mention Su Yu, but after thinking carefully, he did not know who was older between the two cousins. Hence, he asked, Hong, you're 21 years old, right? What month were you born in? He had won so many awards at such a young age and even graduated early. He was simply a genius. September, Shenhong said directly. September. Su Yuantek was a little surprised. He did not expect the two cousins to be in the same month. He immediately shouted in his heart, What day is September? I'm a day younger than my cousin. I was born in the early morning of the 16th. Actually, it should only be a few hours difference. Shenhong also knew of Su Yu's existence. When Su Yuantek heard this, he was even more shocked. Su Yu was born around 8:00 in the evening on the 15th. After all, he was a father, so he remembered very clearly. However, he did not expect Shenhong and Su Yu to be born in such a short period of time. Furthermore, looking at the extent of his maturity, the one in front of him was more like an older brother. However, in just a few hours, the difference in temperament was too great. Yu's grades were poor since he was young. He even lost his face to get into this university. It was not an exaggeration to say that Shin Hong knew everything from the sky to the earth. The former was well versed in eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling. As for the latter, thinking of this, he really wanted to send his son back to the furnace to be remade. You guys haven't met yet, right? When your mother recovers, she should visit the Su family more often. Your cousin is ignorant and incompetent. With your temperament, you can also guide him, Su Yuantek said. Okay, I also want to visit uncle and aunt more often in the future and thank you on behalf of my mother, Shin Hong quickly said. What are you thanking me for? Su Yuantek smiled casually. Ever since I was young, my mommy always said that it's all thanks to auntie's help. Uncle and auntie have always been kind to us. I remember it all. Shin Hong was very serious. Su Yuantek's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. He turned his head to look at the woman on the bed. He didn't know if it was because Shin Tong looked familiar, but when he looked at her again, there was a sense of familiarity. It was strange. However, perhaps it was because the two sisters, Shin Tong and Shin Shi, were somewhat similar. While they were chatting, the door to the ward opened and a woman walked in with some fruits in her hands. Several people turned their heads to look and met Shin Shi's seemingly surprised gaze. Su Yuantek frowned subconsciously. He felt a little uncomfortable. It seemed that Shin Shi was a little strange when she came. Jing Yunzhao felt that Shin Shi's smile was a little different from usual. Usually, even if she didn't like her, she would still act like she was looking at her daughter. However, at this time, her smile was a little stiff, as if she had undergone plastic surgery. Chapter 1043. Shin Shi walked in with her things. Although Shin Hong hadn't seen his aunt since he came back to China, he had seen her photo. Therefore, he hurried to greet her, feeling a little strange. Why didn't his uncle and aunt come together if they were husband and wife? Moreover, it seemed that his aunt didn't expect his uncle to come at all. Aunt, you're here too. I was chatting with my uncle. Shin Hong smiled. Oh, really? What did you talk about? Shin Shi smiled, and a trace of judgment flashed in her eyes. Her hands were clenched tightly in secret, and her heart was filled with hatred. Shin Shi's life was really too big. In the past, even though she wanted to deal with this younger sister of hers, they were still related by blood. She had never thought of letting her die. As long as she lived her life peacefully and didn't steal the glory and everything that belonged to her, then everything would be fine. However, she just didn't listen and insisted on coming back from abroad. She insisted on showing her face in public and opening a beauty salon. Of all the people she could work with, she just had to choose Jing Yunzhao. Not only that, she even wanted to go to the Su family. She had hinted to her a long time ago. She hadn't let her step into the Su family for 3 whole years. Didn't she know it in her heart? Therefore, this time, she wanted her to die. However, she didn't expect that after such a big car accident, she would only fall into a coma and attract Shin Hong. We didn't talk much. My uncle asked me how my life was abroad. He also said that when my mother recovered, he would let me and my son accompany her often. Shin Hong's tone was somewhat affectionate. He and his mother didn't have any other relatives. In addition, his mother had been talking about his aunt in front of him all these years. Therefore, he really respected this aunt in his heart. Shin Shi gritted her teeth and smiled. Okay, we'll wait until your mother recovers. Shin Hong smiled. Su Yuantek didn't have much to say when Shin Shi came. The same went for Jing Yunzhao and Xiao Haiqing. The room was inevitably a little awkward. Therefore, after a while, the 3 of them were ready to leave. There were surveillance cameras everywhere in the room, so they didn't have to worry that Xinxi would do something bad to Shintong in front of others. Zhao, why do you like Shintong? Su Yuantek asked on the way back. Auntie Tong treats people very well and is more sincere. When she looks at someone, it makes you feel like she's listening to you seriously. She's very considerate of other people's faces, but at the same time, she also has her own thoughts. She's a woman who looks weak on the surface, but is actually very strong. Jing Yunzhao thought about it and gave a serious evaluation. What about Xinxi? Why don't you like her? Su Yuantek asked again. Jing Yunzhao pursed his lips and hesitated. After a while, he said, there are some things that I didn't want to tell you. After all, you are husband and wife, but I think it's necessary to remind you. In the past, she was afraid that her uncle and Xinxi were deeply in love. She could deal with the small conflicts between her and Xinxi, but if it was a life-threatening conflict, it would make her uncle sad. Moreover, she didn't have any evidence, so she didn't dare to tell him directly. Moreover, she had always been used to dealing with trouble by herself. Even if she had to borrow someone else's hand, she wouldn't directly entrust the matter to others. Therefore, she subconsciously kept it a secret. Not long after I came to the capital, I already knew about Xinxi. When I went to Aunt Tong's beauty salon, I happened to see a crazy fan attacking Aunt Tong. Aunt Tong also said that this wasn't the first time. Later, in the car, I met a person who injected poison into the driver. It almost killed everyone in the car, but there was no evidence to prove that she did it. At that time, I didn't think too much about it. Chapter 1044. The reason I knew about Xinxi was from Aunt Tong. At that time, Grandpa and I bumped into the sisters at the mall. Aunt Tong felt that Xinxi's reaction was strange, so she asked me if I knew her sister. At that time, I felt strange. As a daughter-in-law, she should meet her father-in-law even if he didn't like her. But this matter was denied by Xinxi. She insisted that she wasn't feeling well, but after that incident, Hai Qing and I almost drank poisoned wine at Aunt Tong's place. At this point, Jing Yunzhao chuckled, his eyes cold. Then shouldn't you be suspicious of Shintong? Su Yuantek frowned. Eldest uncle, Shintong and I are business partners. My death wouldn't benefit Shintong. Moreover, although Shintong and I had only met a few times at that time, we got along very well. Another point is, unless Shintong is very stupid, she wouldn't use such a method because if Xiao Haiqing and I died, she would be the first unlucky person to bear the brunt. She was also a public figure before, so she would definitely lose her reputation and even the fact that she had a child out of wedlock would be exposed. Also, this wine was a gift from Xinxi. When she passed it to Shintong, she specifically said that it was to thank me for taking care of Grandpa. The fruit wine was specially brewed with aconite. Fortunately, I could smell it. Not only that, after the incident, when Xinxi found out that I didn't drink the wine, she immediately took it back personally. After Jing Yunzhao finished speaking, Xiao Haiqing nodded her head as if it was true. Su Yuantek took a deep breath. His eyes were deep, and it was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. Xinxi actually did something to Zhao before. But at that time, Xinxi shouldn't have known her at all. Why would she think of targeting a little girl who had just arrived in the capital with no background? But if he said that she was innocent, it would be awkward. The Su family could find all kinds of medicinal herbs and had a lot of pharmacology books. Xinxi liked to read books and had done a lot of research on medicinal cuisine. She was indeed capable of poisoning people, Uncle knows. He will investigate her background carefully. Su Yuantek nodded, feeling a little irritated. Although he didn't share a bed with this woman, no matter what, this person was still his wife and someone by his side. After being together for so many years, he had even thought that one day, the two of them would silently die of old age together. However, he didn't expect that this seemingly gentle and kind woman was most likely a wolf, tiger, or leopard lurking by his side. I had someone investigate her before, but they only found out that she had called a few people many times, and those people were the fans who attacked Aunt Tong. Those fans are either dead, in prison, or in a mental hospital. Uncle, you can start from there. Although it can't prove that she did something bad to me, at least we can be sure that she was cruel to her sister. Jing Yunzhao said. Su Yuantek was surprised and nodded. According to what you said, this accident is also very likely to be done by her. Su Yuantek was a little shocked. It's not likely, it's certain. Jing Yunzhao didn't intend to hide it and continued, in 3 years, Aunt Tong had more than 5 accidents. How unlucky a person must be to encounter so many coincidences. And it's very strange that the situation this time is more serious. It seems that she deliberately wanted to kill her. In my opinion, in the past, Shinshit seemed to want to drive her away and oppress her. Now, she wants to make her disappear, and the reason for her to disappear. Uncle, on the day of the accident, Aunt Tong wanted to go shopping first and then celebrate my birthday. Chapter 1045. Su Yuantek's face became more and more dignified, and there was a cloud of confusion in his heart that he couldn't explain. Even if Shinshi hated Jing Yunzhao, it was impossible for her to vent her anger on Shintong because of this. Therefore, according to the situation in the past few years, if the accident was really caused by her, her purpose was not to attack Jing Yunzhao, but to prevent Shintong from going to the Su family. But why? Along the way, Su Yuantek was particularly depressed. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure it out. After returning, according to the phone clues provided by Jing Yunzhao, he immediately sent someone to investigate. In the end, it was just as Jing Yunzhao had predicted. The people on the list were all locked up because they had attacked Shintong in the past. They were all so-called crazy fans. In this day and age, even young idols wouldn't encounter so many strange people and incidents. How could Shintong, who had retreated from the industry for more than 20 years, encounter such strange people? Immediately, he increased his strength to deal with those people. However, he found that although these people looked like hoodlums, their teeth were very tight. No matter how he threatened or tempted them, they did not respond. What kind of ability did Shinshi have to be able to do this? Originally, Su Yuantek just wanted to prove Jing Yunzhao's words, but now, he couldn't help but want to investigate deeper. Immediately, he turned his target to those people's families. Strangely, he found that the men who attacked Shintong had one thing in common. That was, the father and the daughter depended on each other and had a very good relationship. After the father was locked up or sent to the mental hospital, the son or daughter had disappeared. These people's families were very poor, and they had almost no relatives or friends. After they disappeared, no outsider called the police. It was as if they had never appeared. Su Yuantek's heart couldn't help but sink. This matter was really getting more and more complicated. These things were investigated by Su Yuantek, and Jing Yunzhao could also save a lot of effort. Early the next morning, he went to the Red-Crowned Crane Hall from the hospital with Shin Hong. As soon as Jing Yunzhao arrived at the Red-Crowned Crane Hall, the old doctors immediately became spirited. After dealing with their patients, they hurriedly came over to greet him. Dr. Jing, I met a patient a few days ago. She has been suffering from asthma for many years. Every day, she coughs until morning and can't sleep. That woman has been sick for 10 years. Do you want to take a look at her? Little Dr. Jing, please take a look at mine first. It's cold and damp paralysis in my meridians, causing my meridians to contract and be unable to turn around. I've used aconite. Can you check if it's accurate? Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched, and Shen Hong jumped in fright. When the patients saw the reaction of the old doctors, they looked around curiously. They had long heard that a very young doctor had come to the immortal Crane Hole. Her medical skills were especially good. It seemed that it was this person. She was really beautiful. Old doctors, you're not allowed to cause any more trouble. Otherwise, I'll leave right now. Jing Yunzhao's face turned cold as he threw out a sentence. As soon as he said this, the old doctors around him instantly fell silent and didn't say a word. Little Dr. Jing, you're too lazy. You've been on holiday for quite some time. You've only come now. Everyone misses you very much. One of them said with a dry laugh. Jing Yunzhao exhaled. She was absolutely amiable to the old doctors. The main reason was that this group of old doctors was too indecent. If she didn't get angry, they would keep asking questions. Their own standards were not low. Many of the questions they asked actually had answers in their hearts, but they just liked to test her. It was as if they wanted to prove whether she was omnipotent or not. Every time, they would make her spend extra time to solve some problems that didn't require any effort at all. It was simply unbearable. Chapter 1046. Jing Yunzhao walked towards her seat, and the few old people followed her obediently, not feeling the slightest bit of embarrassment. In their eyes, it was enough that Jing Yunzhao had medical skills. They were friends who knew each other through medicine. Age and whatnot were just floating clouds. It's just that if Jing Yunzhao knew what they were thinking, she would have to remind them. Thinking back to the first day she came here, their attitudes weren't like this. Shen Hong followed behind and was directly ignored by a few old doctors. As soon as Jing Yunzhao sat down, the old doctors immediately sorted out the recent difficult and miscellaneous diseases and asked her for advice. They talked about some things about yin and yang. Shen Hong was confused. He felt as if he had walked into a very strange brainwashing organization. And in this organization, Jing Yunzhao was obviously the boss. A few people gathered around her and listened to her talk about medicinal herbs that they didn't understand. After a while, they all nodded their heads in understanding, looking as if they had learned a lot from her. If it were not for the fact that there were some patients here at this time, he might really think that these people were all hired by Jing Yunzhao. While Jing Yunzhao was explaining, there were a few apprentices who took a look at the patients first. After they were done, the old doctors went up and diagnosed a few patients and wrote prescriptions. Taking advantage of the fact that there weren't many people in the clinic, they continued their discussion. Shen Hong sat next to her and watched quietly. The more he watched, the more he felt that Jing Yunzhao had a very special light. When they were talking about other things yesterday, Jing Yunzhao was very calm and very low-key. But at this moment, she was very flamboyant and spoke with assurance. He could feel a love and obsession for medical skills in her eyes. At this moment, Shen Hong had already believed most of it. Jing Yunzhao spent the whole morning communicating with others. After a simple meal in the afternoon, she began to treat the patients. At this time, in front of her was a man with a swollen head and face. The man's eyes were narrowed into thin slits. It should be difficult for him to even see things. After Jing Yunzhao quickly examined the man, she immediately asked someone to boil the medicine. After a while, something like mud was smeared on the man's face. It looked very funny. Many patients saw it and could not help laughing. This treatment method was like a woman applying a mask. It was very funny. Obviously, the man was not in a good mood, but he should have endured it with the intention of trying. But not long after the medicine was applied, Shen Hong found that the man's face seemed to be steaming. There was sweat dripping down the ointment. When the young medicine boy saw it, he quickly changed the medicine again, and the cycle repeated. After 7 or 8 times in a row, 2 hours had passed. At this time, the face that was so swollen that he couldn't see anything had actually become very handsome. His complexion was ruddy as usual, and his eyes were bright and spirited. It was as if he had become a different person. Suddenly, Shen Hong was speechless. From the diagnosis to the medicine boiling, he saw it all. It was absolutely impossible to fake. Jing Yunzhao indeed had the ability of a divine doctor. No wonder these old doctors were so polite to her. They even bowed their heads to ask her for advice. Other than this patient, Jing Yunzhao also treated a few others at the same time. Some of them immediately saw results, but there were also some who still needed more treatment. Even so, the words she said made the patients nod their heads in agreement. Each and every one of them was very sincere and polite. Recently, there were many patients in the red-crowned crane hall. One of them was because of Jing Yunzhao. The news of her curing several stubborn diseases had spread. Because it was next to a big hospital, many people chose to come and take a look. Shen Hong was completely convinced. Before he left, he was even affected. He stared at Jing Yunzhao in amazement and admiration. His mood could not calm down for a long time. Chapter 1047. Jing Yunzhao, on the other hand, was acting as usual. Her attitude was nothing out of the ordinary. Even after leaving the red-crowned crane hall, her temperament was obviously restrained. Other than her outstanding appearance, her low-key appearance made her seem like an ordinary little girl. "Little cousin, I'll have to trouble you with my mother," Shen Hong said quickly. "Then stop taking the medicine when you go back. I'll go over tomorrow morning to officially start the treatment, but I'm afraid the hospital won't give in so easily," Jing Yunzhao said. Shen Hong nodded. The next morning, Jing Yunzhao arrived at the hospital early. However, when she arrived, she saw a young nurse running in another direction at lightning speed. She had only been in the ward for 2 or 3 minutes when a large wave of doctors and nurses barged in. Shen Tong, who was lying on the hospital bed, still did not look good. Shen Hong was already prepared, but when he saw so many doctors coming again, he was a little dissatisfied. Just after Jing Yunzhao said that she could cure his mother, many nurses had already tried to persuade him again and again. He knew that these nurses had good intentions, so he did not show much resistance. Last night, when he suggested to the doctors to stop taking the medicine, several doctors and nurses were very angry and even scolded Jing Yunzhao. However, due to his own insistence, these people could not do anything. They did not expect that they would cause trouble when Jing Yunzhao appeared. "You're the little girl who claims to be a doctor?" A middle-aged man stared at Jing Yunzhao and asked in dissatisfaction. "What do you want?" Jing Yunzhao frowned slightly. This group of people did not have the ability to wake Shen Tong up at all. Since that was the case, it was reasonable to let someone with the ability try. Although as a doctor, it was true that they hated this kind of behavior, most of the hospitals now follow the wishes of the patient's family. Besides, although the medicine that the hospital prescribed for Shen Tong was to nourish her internal organs, it was actually 30% poisonous. The daily infusion had a great impact. If she did not wake up in a short period of time, the medicine would have to be stopped in the future. What they cared about now was the medicine and the money, not Shen Tong's body. "Little girl, how can you harm people at such a young age? Do you know what you're doing? This brother Shen has just returned from overseas and doesn't know much about the domestic affairs. How dare you use this to deceive him? If something happens to Shen Tong, who's going to take responsibility?" "You," the leading doctor said angrily. "How can you be sure that I'm lying to him? According to what you said, can I also say that your hospital is a bully by giving patients things that they don't need?" Jing Yunzhao chuckled and replied casually. If he didn't use acupuncture, he would definitely use medicine, but he definitely wouldn't use so much, and the amount wouldn't be so large. This group of people more or less wanted to squeeze more money out of others. Most of the time, they felt that eating a little more medicine wouldn't have any effect, so they didn't take it to heart. But in reality, those drugs would slowly accumulate in the body, especially since Shintong's body's resistance was relatively weak now. So many drugs would only increase the burden on her body, making it difficult for Tsingao to wake up. Bastard! Are you implying that we should let the patient take the medicine randomly? Where are your parents? Do you believe that we can sue you for slander? The doctor said angrily. Shintong used to be a very famous artist. Recently, many people had heard that Shintong was staying in their hospital, so they trusted the hospital more and more. Many people even came to see the doctor. Chapter 1048. The hospital was also very attentive to Yu Shintong. After all, if she really woke up in the hospital could use this opportunity to publicize it. Especially since they had already hinted to the reporters that it would be difficult for her to wake up. Regardless of whether she woke up or not, the hospital wouldn't suffer any losses. Jing Yunzhao's appearance was a blow to the hospital's ability. If Shintong was really saved by Jing Yunzhao, it would be a slap to the hospital's face. If she didn't wake up, people would definitely say that the hospital wasn't strict enough and allowed the patient to mess around. Jing Yunzhao looked at the aggressive doctor and knew that it was different for him to make a move in someone else's territory. Hence, he said, "Cousin Shin, go and settle the discharge procedures and transfer her to the red-crowned crane hole." The moment he said that, all the doctors were stunned. They knew about the red-crowned crane hole. There were many clinics, and the red-crowned crane hall bore the brunt of it. In the past, the red-crowned crane hall had a resounding reputation, but it had gradually fallen silent in the past few decades. Naturally, it couldn't be compared to their hospital. In the eyes of many people, relying on manpower to diagnose a pulse wasn't as direct as using medical equipment. Furthermore, the pace of the hospital was getting faster and faster. There weren't many people who could accept a primitive place like the red-crowned crane hole. Red-crowned crane hole. That kind of place can treat illnesses. I can guarantee that if you send the patient there, the patient will die without a doubt. The doctor directly threatened them with disdain. Did they think that they could steal their jobs with just a few words? Based on what? Hearing that someone insulted the red-crowned crane hall, Jing Yunzhao's face instantly turned cold. You're saying that the red-crowned crane hall is a scammer? Jing Yunzhao glanced at the badge on his chest and continued, Dr. Fong, right? Please remember this sentence. If Shintong doesn't die and wakes up after being transferred away, please take back what you said. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Also, I think that if there wasn't Immortal Crane Hall, there wouldn't be a person like you in this world. When your ancestors were still alive, there weren't any foreign things in this world. It was all thanks to the deceiving people that you're talking about to cure and save people. Jing Yunzhao was also impressed by the medical skills of foreign countries. He had also studied it himself. Although he wasn't proficient in it, he couldn't help but admire those exquisite surgical methods. They were fast and thorough. However, he never felt that it was better than Chinese medicine. The charm of national healers was far more mysterious and magical than what people in this world knew. It was just that many of them had lost their inheritance. Dr. Fong's face turned ugly. He didn't expect a little girl to be so stubborn. Little brother Shin, you have to think carefully. If you transfer to Immortal Crane Hall and something happens to the patient, we won't be responsible. The doctor said with a serious face. Shinhong nodded his head, I've already made my decision. Since your hospital doesn't allow others to interfere, then I'll transfer my mommy to another hospital. Director Fong, I'll go through the procedures now. Dr. Fong held his breath when he heard that. His original intention was to let this little girl back off. But now, the one who backed off was actually them. Do as you wish. Humph. Dr. Fong gritted his teeth in anger. He snorted and turned to leave. Some of the other doctors saw this and felt uncomfortable. They looked at Jing Yunzhao as if they wanted to eat her up. Jing Yunzhao didn't mind. Some people did have good intentions, so there was no need to kill the whole boat full of people with one pole. Shen Hong's procedures were done very quickly. After only 2 hours, the patient was transferred from the hospital. Chapter 1049. Shen Hong's appearance was outstanding, and he treated people humbly. During his time in the hospital, he had won the hearts of the nurses and some female doctors. Now that he had listened to Jing Yunzhao and taken his mother away, many people were disappointed. Moreover, since Shen Tong came to the hospital, some reporters had heard about the situation and stayed near the ward, hoping to get some information. At this time, these doctors were angry, and some of them lost some of their morals and directly scolded in front of the reporters. Shen Tong is so pitiful. She was in a coma in an accident, and it's already very difficult to save her life. But she didn't expect her son to be cheated by his little girlfriend. I heard that the medical fees were too high, and it's cheaper to buy Chinese medicine, so he transferred her to those quack clinics that only know how to cheat people. As soon as this was said, the reporters immediately exclaimed that they had found a treasure. Although Shen Tong had not been in the entertainment circle for a long time, she was still a person who had acted in classics. She still had appeal and influence. If this news was released, there would be no need to worry about clicks. Jing Yunzhao did not expect that his doctor would become an insensible and stingy girlfriend. At this time, after sending the patient to the Red-Crowned Crane Hall, the first round of acupuncture began. The Red-Crowned Crane Hall was very large, and there were independent rooms for the patients. Every day, there was a small medical assistant who cleaned and disinfected the room. In terms of environment, it was better than those big hospitals. Shen Hong was originally worried that there would be no one to help him take care of his mother, but the truth was that most of the time, there was no need for him to intervene at all. Those medical assistants were very sensible and mature. They knew how to treat patients better than he did. Every time Jing Yunzhao performed acupuncture, a few old doctors would fight to be the first to observe her technique. Even though Jing Yunzhao was young, her technique was as if she had decades of experience in acupuncture and moxibustion. Naturally, it was the same this time. These old doctors praised Jing Yunzhao, which made Shen Hong feel more at ease. The acupuncture treatment didn't take too long. When it was over, Jing Yunzhao wrote another prescription. At this time, Shen Tong had already regained a bit of consciousness. Chewing and drinking some medicine shouldn't be a problem, but if she wanted to wake up completely, she would have to wait until the third round of acupuncture. That day, Shen Hong also stayed at the Red-Crowned Crane Hall. Jing Yunzhao rarely came to the Red-Crowned Crane Hall for 3 consecutive days, and this group of old guys was very happy. But on the third day, the atmosphere in Immortal Crane Hall was clearly different. Little Dr. Jing, you're finally here. Look, this morning, there are already a lot of people who are pretending to be sick and wasting time. The real patients are still lining up behind. A few of the old doctors were extremely angry. They did not know where these bastards came from. They came in the middle of the night and occupied the front line. They tried to communicate with the doctors. The colleagues who spoke immediately took out their equipment to film. They were so angry that they wanted to beat them up. Jing Yunzhao coldly glanced at the crowd and found that most of them were holding cameras or small recording equipment. He immediately showed a somewhat disgusted expression. Are you Shen Hong's girlfriend? You seem to be very familiar with these old doctors? Is that why Shintong was transferred here? However, these reporters didn't have any opinions about Jing Yunzhao's attitude. One of them even went up to him and said. Jing Yunzhao raised his eyebrows. Are you here to see a doctor or to make trouble? Of course I'm here to see a doctor, but it shouldn't affect anything if I ask you a few questions, right? The other party said. Jing Yunzhao chuckled. You said it won't affect anything. Then I'll have to trouble you to take a good look at the patients behind you. They came early enough, but you blocked them from seeing the patients. How can you say that it won't affect them? It seems that your bottom line is a little low. Chapter 1050. Being questioned by a little girl like Jing Yunzhao, the other party was a little embarrassed, but after thinking about it, she still said, We are also doing this for work, I hope you can understand. Moreover, Shintong was once a public figure after all. Being taken away from the hospital when she was unconscious is very dangerous, isn't it? Everyone just wants to know the truth. Truth. Jing Yunzhao couldn't help but laugh mockingly. There were always people who stood on the moral high ground, and in order to seek the so-called truth, they would hurt a person they didn't even know or understand. Want to know the truth? Okay, no problem, but it's impossible now, because we still have to treat patients. Just now, you said it was for work, but so are we. Not only for work, but also for the health of others. After I treat all the patients here, when I have time, you can ask anything you want. Jing Yunzhao was a little angry at first, but after thinking about it carefully, it wasn't worth it. You are a doctor. The female reporter didn't believe him at all. Whether I am or not, you'll know in a while. Now, please take 2 steps back and stand at the side. Don't block the seat, okay? Jing Yunzhao glanced at her indifferently and sat down in her seat. Because of these reporters, there were a lot of patients today, so she had to help first. Immortal Crane Hall operated 24 hours a day, but every night, the apprentice doctors were on duty. If there was an emergency, they would go to the backyard to inform the senior doctors. And the apprentices of Immortal Crane Hall were definitely stronger than ordinary doctors in other places. Because of the great pressure, they learned a lot. More importantly, almost all of them had touched all kinds of medicinal herbs since they were young and had grown up watching their masters treat illnesses. Just like yesterday, a few senior doctors asked her if she wanted to take in a few registered disciples to teach them. The children here lived simple lives. They were either the children of the Jing family side branch, the juniors of the senior doctors' families or relatives, and some of them were poor but talented orphans. In the backyard, there were some senior doctors and senior doctors who couldn't continue to practice medicine. They usually taught these children to read and write, memorizing all kinds of medical books from childhood. If they didn't have enough patience or a bad character, they wouldn't stay, because for the future patients, the doctor's character was very important. After Jing Yunzhao sat down, the reporter pursed his lips, feeling a sense of guilt that he didn't dare to blaspheme. After thinking for a bit, he waved his work pass in front of Jing Yunzhao and said, I'm Mimi, remember my name. When we return, you must answer my questions. After saying that, she chose to retreat to the back and wait. However, even though the reporter named Mimi chose to retreat, there were still some people with no professional ethics who insisted on going forward to ask for clarification. They pretended to be patients and asked all sorts of questions. You are a doctor. How many years have you read medical books? Pulse diagnosis. And as far as I know, to practice medicine you need a certificate, do you have one? A man in front of her stretched out his hand and kept asking. Jing Yunzhao pressed his hand on the man's wrist without a trace, curling his lips. He wasn't in a hurry. After a while, he slowly wrote down a prescription and said, Bad breath prescription, go get the medicine yourself. Hearing this, a trace of anger flashed across the man's face. And the one called Mimi just now couldn't help but smile. People of the same trade were enemies, she didn't ask, naturally she didn't want others to succeed. The male reporter in front of Jing Yunzhao saw that Jing Yunzhao ignored him. He was really angry. Looking at the many cubicles, he didn't think and prepared to rush in. Chapter 1051. Jing Yunzhao only glanced at him from the corner of her eyes before she casually picked up a pen from the table and threw it over. This method of hers could definitely be compared to that of a godly hidden weapon. With a casual throw, the pen directly hit the man's lower back. He instantly felt a sharp pain and fell to the ground with a bang, scaring everyone. The other party struggled on the ground twice and turned to glare at Jing Yunzhao. You fucking hand. It's just a pen. You can write a news article and see who will believe it. Jing Yunzhao smiled and did not take it to heart at all. She said, also, it's not good for you to barge into those rooms rashly. Don't think that other people have a temper like mud. Okay, next. Jing Yunzhao unhurriedly knocked on the ornament-like bell on the table, and the medicine boy immediately led the next person forward. The male reporter just now was not reconciled and wanted to go forward again. Suddenly, he felt that his whole body was very stiff. His waist was as if it was going to break. He could not move at all. My waist. He quickly shouted. His companion next to him saw that he was pretending to tease people. He was so anxious that he sweated profusely. Call an ambulance. It's really painful. Call an ambulance in the clinic. This was a strange way of saying it. Jing Yunzhao did not care about him at all. At this time, another reporter appeared in front of him. He opened his mouth and was about to speak. Jing Yunzhao suddenly sneered. Do you really have the time to care about other people's affairs? Brother, your illness is not light. You usually smoke a lot, right? What a pity. This sentence made the reporter stunned. You. What do you mean? Recently, he always felt a little uncomfortable. Sometimes, he felt a little difficult to breathe and his throat was a little uncomfortable. Because of work, he often had to stay up late. It was normal for him to stay up all night to follow up on the news of artists. At night, he smoked when he had nothing to do. Therefore, some time ago, he specially went for a lung checkup. The results were very reassuring. Other than some dark shadows, there were no other pathological changes. In addition, his smoking frequency had also improved recently, so there shouldn't be any more problems. But for some reason, she still felt flustered recently. To put it simply, your current condition is very serious. I believe that you should be able to feel it yourself. The larynx governs breathing and belongs to the meridian circulation of the lungs, liver, and kidneys. However, you have internal injuries to the lungs and spleen, causing the spleen to lose its healthy circulation, causing the lungs to lose its clarity and solemnity, causing the dampness and turbidity to congeal in the larynx, causing the disease. Because of the foreign body in your larynx, there are some problems with your voice, which even affects your breathing. If you still don't understand, then I don't mind using another term to tell you, and that is throat cancer. Jing Yunzhao's attitude was serious. Since he was indeed a patient, he was naturally more polite. When the other party heard this, he opened his mouth, but his mind suddenly went blank. Recently, my throat has been feeling uncomfortable. Was he going to die? Can it be cured? Subconsciously, his survival instincts asked. It can be cured, but are you sure you want to be treated here? Jing Yunzhao chuckled, his tone carrying a hint of mockery. This disease was not terminal. The situation of the person in front of her was not very serious. If it was Western medicine, surgery could be done. When the time came, some parts of the larynx would be removed. She did not know the details, but she knew that if the surgery was really done, the ability to speak would not be preserved. Although the survival rate was high, there was a possibility of recurrence and metastasis. Chapter 1052. The person in front of him had a special occupation. Once the surgery was done, he would probably have to change his profession. It would be impossible for him to continue holding a microphone and doing interviews everywhere. Jing Yunzhao smiled. The person's heart shook violently, feeling a little guilty. He was here for an interview today, and it didn't look good. Now, this little girl was even treating him. Even though he didn't know if it was real or fake, he just felt that it wasn't a lie. He was well aware of his own body's condition. "I'll go check it out first," the person said in a daze. He did not want to stay for the interview and left the clinic with his things. Jing Yunzhao raised his eyebrows and did not stop him. The other interviewers could not help but feel nervous. Wasn't this girl a little too strange? Two people went up to cause trouble. One shouted that her back hurt as if she was possessed, and the other was so depressed that he did not even want to work. For a moment, everyone learned from the reporter named Mimi. It was better to wait and see. They all stepped back and let the patients come forward. Jing Yunzhao was very patient. He looked, listened, asked, and felt the pulse. What he said made sense, and the people could not help but nod. This situation made it easier for them to be immersed in it. It was as if they were brainwashed. Unknowingly, they did not feel annoyed and waited obediently for 2 to 3 hours. After Jing Yunzhao finished seeing the patient, he went to give Shintong the last acupuncture treatment. After the acupuncture treatment, the person slowly woke up. Shenhong, who was guarding the room, was overjoyed when he saw this. His gratitude and admiration for Jing Yunzhao increased. Shintong had been conscious since the first acupuncture treatment, but it was shallow. Now that he was awake, he was not surprised by where he was. Yunzhao. Thank you. Shintong's voice was hoarse and heavy. Jing Yunzhao smiled and shook his head. It's good that you're okay. Little cousin, does mommy have any sequelae? The accident was too serious. I'm still worried. Shenhong asked politely. It's fine. Aunt Tong is quite lucky. She just needs to recuperate. You can let Aunt Tong stay here for the time being. It'll be more convenient for her to get the medicine, Jing Yunzhao replied. When Shintong heard her son calling Jing Yunzhao little cousin, she was stunned for a moment. However, Jing Yunzhao had already told her that she had acknowledged her biological grandfather and that Elder Su was her biological grandfather, so she immediately understood. I just heard a noise outside. Did something happen? Shenhong breathed a sigh of relief and asked curiously. Jing Yunzhao glanced at him, then turned to look at Aunt Tong, and said, the news of your transfer has been spread to the reporters, and now they've come to Crane Hall. Even if you didn't ask, I still wanted to ask for your help. No matter how eloquent she was, no matter how much she said, it was of no use to the group of people outside. The only way was for Shintong to step in. As long as the people outside saw that she was awake, they would naturally shut their mouths. When Shintong and Shenhong heard that people came to cause trouble because of the transfer, they immediately felt guilty. Hong open the door and let the reporters in. I'll explain it to them. Shintong ordered. Mommy, your body. Is it okay? Shenhong frowned. It's fine. I know that you've been feeding me, massaging me, and injecting me for the past few days. I just can't respond. Now that I finally have some strength, I should do something. Shintong nodded and patted Shenhong's hand twice to comfort him. Chapter 1053. Since Shintong had spoken, Shinhong didn't try to stop her. Furthermore, if it weren't for Jing Yunzhao and the Crane Hall, his mother wouldn't have been able to wake up so quickly and still be so energetic. Shinhong and Jing Yunzhao walked out together. When the reporters saw them, they immediately swarmed over and asked Shinhong, "You're Shinhong, right? Why did you transfer Shintong here? How's her condition now?" Shinhong was startled by the crazed appearance of the reporters. He couldn't help but glance at Jing Yunzhao. Jing Yunzhao scanned the crowd and pointed at the reporter named Mimi who was stuck at the back. He said, "I said that you can ask a few questions. You can do it. As for the others, don't answer them." When the crowd heard this, they were a little unhappy. However, since they were all present, as long as they could hear it, it was the same. Thus, they didn't stop her. Mimi didn't expect Jing Yunzhao to actually let her interview him. She felt a little guilty. In order to dig up the latest news about Shintong's current situation, she had come in the middle of the night. There were other reporters and staff members with her. She had indeed delayed Shintong's treatment. Originally, she didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. After all, she had been like this for the past few years. The competition for jobs was fierce, and if she wanted to survive, she had to use all means. However, in those 2 to 3 hours, she saw this little girl treat patients and immediately felt a sense of inferiority. Thinking back to when she had just graduated, she also wanted to be a righteous reporter in the future. She wanted to expose the truth about those pitiful people or various matters. However, as time passed, her original intention slowly changed. She eventually became an entertainment reporter. Inside the clinic, the doctors, apprentices, and medical apprentices all had their own duties. Before they came, it was peaceful and quiet, giving people a sense of holiness. But now, the atmosphere had changed. Standing here alone, they felt like they had polluted the air. "Thank you." Mimi's heart was filled with emotions as she walked to the front. After thinking for a moment, she asked Shinhong, "Excuse me, you are indeed Shinhong, right?" "That's right." Shinhong nodded. "Is this your girlfriend?" Mimi asked again. Shinhong looked at Jing Yunzhao in shock and smiled. "I'm sorry, but that's not the case. She and my mother are friends, and she's also my cousin. At the same time, she's also a doctor, which is why I believe her." "Then may I know about Miss Shintong's current situation?" "I heard that she has been in a coma," Mimi added. After saying that, everyone looked at Shinhong expectantly. "Of course, but my mother just woke up and can't answer too many of your questions, so I hope you can cooperate a little, okay?" Shinhong's voice was polite and gentle, giving people a good impression of him. In their line of work, they often received some insincere treatment. Although those artists also smiled at them, it was completely different from Shinhong's smile. Sincerity. That kind of politeness and upbringing seemed to come from the bones, making people restrain themselves even more. After a few seconds, these people suddenly felt that something was wrong. Didn't they say that Shintong was in a coma? Moreover, the people from the hospital said that her current situation was still quite dangerous. If she stopped taking her medicine and transferred to another hospital, it would greatly affect Shintong's body. It was very likely that she would never wake up again. But now, Shinhong said that she just woke up. Shintong woke up. Is that true? You mean we can go interview Shintong? Mimi asked in surprise. Chapter 1054. Not only Mimi, but the others also felt that it was too surreal. They almost couldn't resist the urge to rush in. "I have to thank my cousin for waking my mother up. She treated my mother with acupuncture every day." Shinhong thanked them and nodded, seeing is believing. You can go in, but don't make too much noise. Mimi and the others didn't expect that Shenhong would allow them to see the patient. They immediately nodded and Shenhong gestured for them to enter the small room where Shentong was temporarily staying. However, within this group of people, there was a companion of the man who didn't listen to Jing Yunzhao's advice and wanted to barge in. Jing Yunzhao didn't say anything and immediately stopped them. She ordered a few of the medical apprentices to chase them out. If it was before, all the reporters would have been dissatisfied, but it was different now. Jing Yunzhao was only targeting the reporter who wasted the patient's time. Everyone felt that it was only right and proper, and some even rejoiced in others' misfortune. Shentong was leaning against the headboard of the bed. She frowned and drank the medicine brought by the medical assistant. When she saw that someone had come in, she temporarily put the medicine bowl aside. The room wasn't big. It was just a small consultation room with a single bed and a table. However, it was ventilated and sunlight shone in. The room didn't have the musty smell of the patient. On the contrary, there was a type of fragrant grass in the room that made the air particularly fresh and comfortable. When Mimi and the others saw Shentong, they were even more shocked. Shenhong wasn't lying. "Miss Shentong, can I interview you?" Mimi asked carefully. She knew that Shentong had left the entertainment industry for a long time. After returning to China, many reporters wanted to interview her, but no one succeeded. The only video she appeared in front of the public was recorded by herself to dispel rumors about Xiao Haiqing and Xiao Xiao. Ever since she became a reporter, this was the first time she had seen Shentong up close. She had seen this famous teenager up close. She suddenly understood why the public and many people in the entertainment industry couldn't forget her. It was because she had a unique aura. She was like a piece of beautiful jade that could withstand time. The more time passed, the more charming she became. Moreover, although her son was already so old, Shentong's skin was still very good. Unlike many people in the entertainment industry who were injected with drugs, she was very natural. Even her appearance did not change much. "Go ahead and ask. I'll try my best to answer." Shentong nodded politely. When Mimi heard this, her face turned red. Even though the goddess was already in her 40s, her temperament was still mesmerizing. "Okay." Mimi took a deep breath and said, "When did you wake up?" "After Miss Jing performed acupuncture on me," Shentong said. "Then, did you know that you were originally living in a regular hospital ward? It's like this. Now, there are rumors outside that your son insisted on bringing you here to please his girlfriend and to save money on the medicine," Mimi said carefully. When Shentong heard this, she was a little surprised. "My son is a very filial person. Moreover, Miss Jing is not my future daughter-in-law. She just acknowledged her family, so she can be considered a relative of mine and my son. As for this place, although I just woke up and don't know where this place is, from the first day Miss Jing performed acupuncture on me, I felt it. Therefore, I'm very satisfied with this place. If I get sick in the future, I'll definitely look for the doctors here. They take good care of me." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.